Section 1 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. Preface. John Kimball, Wiggin. This is the first of a series of literal reprints of some of the most valuable tracts on our early New England history. Their originals are now so scarce as to be, in many cases, almost beyond the reach of the amplest means, so that private collectors and public libraries must be content with some reissue. A strict facsimile, page for page and line by line, were indeed possible, and would be scarcely more costly than such an edition as is here proposed. Such a facsimile would, however, be really no better for accuracy than this, which aims at a faithful reproduction of the original, letter by letter, though not page for page. This form is, on the whole, preferred because it admits that light from notes in immediate connection with the text, which is very desirable in such reprints. The works forming this series will therefore be literally reprinted from the first editions, the intention being to reproduce every peculiarity of the original, down to the minutest errors of the press, so that he who holds one of them in his hand shall read the ipsima verba of the ancient volume, while such introductions and notes will be added as will give the reader the benefit of the latest and broadest research in the department to which each belongs. J.K.W., Boston, 15th July, 1865. End of Section 1.
Section 2 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Claire. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. Introduction by the editor. A novice in historical criticism may very naturally shrink from entering into comparison with a veteran, and when invited by the publisher of this series to prepare for an edition of the first Journals of the Pilgrims, I should hardly have been able to overcome my repugnance to appear guilty of the presumption of being able to do better than anything which such a man as Dr. Young had done so well, had I not remembered that both Bradford's history and the Leyden records have offered themselves to our study since he wrote. Had I not hoped that a personal familiarity from childhood with important portions of the ground on which the events narrated took place might aid me to some conclusions, the data of which had escaped his attentive yet sometimes unfamiliar eye, and had I not greatly desired that a literal reprint of Mourt should be secured. I can only hope that my success, especially in the latter particular, may prove to be in some measure equal to my endeavor, although that has lacked the well-nigh indispensable element of abundant leisure to read proof over and over and over again until every minutest untruthfulness has been eliminated. The Relation was first printed in London by John Bellamy in 1622. In 1624, John Smith introduced an abstract of much of it into his General History under the head of A Plantation in New England. In 1625, it was condensed about one half, and not very accurately, by Purchas, and inserted into the fourth volume of his Pilgrims. This abridgment was reprinted with notes by Dr. Freeman in 1802 in one Mass History Collection 8, pages 203 to 239. In 1822, those portions which Purchas had omitted were reprinted with notes by Dr. Freeman and Judge Davis in 2 Mass History Collection 9, pages 26 to 74, from a manuscript copy procured in 1819 by Monsieur du Ponce from the original volume in the City Library of Philadelphia. These dissecta membra were all that had been done in the way of reissue until 1841, when Dr. Young reprinted the complete work from the copy of the original in the library of Harvard College in his Chronicles of the Pilgrim Fathers, pages 109 to 249. He added copious and very valuable notes, but did not seek to reproduce the volume in its original style. In 1848, Rev. George B. Cheever, D.D. of New York City, issued an edition which he intended should be an accurate reproduction of the Relation in its spelling, though he made no attempt to cast his book in the mold of the original as to form, and freely modified it in the matter of paragraphs and punctuation. adding more than 250 pages of comment or dissertation suggested by the contents. The present, therefore, throwing out the abridgments of Smith and Purchas, the fourth reprint, 5th edition of the book, and the first reissue, in which the endeavor has been made to follow exactly the first copies, in style of type, paging, and identity of embellishment, in all of which particulars neither pains nor expense has been spared to render it worthy of the confidence and favor of connoisseurs. Every caption, initial letter, and ornamental heading has been engraved in facsimile from the original, and the only defect in the reproduction is that the copy, thanks to the superior capabilities of the modern press, is a great deal more splendid than its modest prototype ever was in all the glory of its freshness 243 years ago. The hasty reader will not do justice to the accomplished press from which this volume proceeds, unless he remembers that the proofs of the first edition of the relation were very imperfectly read, and by consequence have compelled this reprint to blush under a load of errors, which would be the ruin of a modern printer of any pretension in the fact were not kept in memory that these errors are, with him, blunders of skill and not of carelessness. I have not usually thought it needful to call attention to them in the notes, except when they become liable to mislead the reader or are of such a nature as very much to obscure the sense. Instances like NY for many, page 5, 11th line from the top, Monday the 13th day for Monday the 18th day, page 61, 5th line from the top, etc., it has not been thought necessary to refer to in the notes as they succinctly explain themselves. John Bellamy's printing office appears to have run very low on punctuation marks as the compositors approach the end of this book, so that italic colons and Old English colons and periods were not unfrequently made to do unwonted duty in plain Roman company, all of which, so far as watchful eyes have been able to secure it, has been here faithfully duplicated. In the recollection of that suggestion of Desbury, which has special force in its application to the reproduction of an ancient volume, quantum impediat intellectus officium vel unius vocabuli semi-plena notia, and in the feeling that Alcuin's motto in its most servile sense is safest for a copyist whether with pen or types, et punctos ponent ordine quoque suo. This reprint has been made from a copy of the original most kindly loaned for the purpose by Mr. Charles Dean of Cambridge, to whom I am further indebted for sundry valuable hints. I have been especially aided in regard to all questions relating to the topography of Provincetown and the extremity of Cape Cod by the intelligent help of the Reverend Osborne Myrick, for many years the excellent pastor of the Congregational Church in that town, who has made the ancient geography and natural history of that interesting but peculiar portion of our Massachusetts territory a special study. My thanks are also due to the Honorable J. Hammond Trumbull of Hartford, Connecticut, for the notes which he has generously furnished upon sundry Indian names herein occurring, thereby enriching the work with suggestions of that descriptions, sometimes of special interest and always of unique value, inasmuch as his dictum upon a question on which he is the most accomplished living authority is necessarily final. I must not forget also to record my gratitude to Monsieur le Baron W.J.C. Rommelmann, Elsewire, archivist of the city of Leyden, for various items from the Leyden Ms. Records, shedding new light upon some of the relationships and experiences of our pilgrims, fathers, and mothers before their coming to these shores, of which I have freely availed myself. All dates have been given in both new and old style to facilitate the convenience of the reader. The maps I have traced from the state map in outline and filled them in by the aid of Major Graham's chart according to my best judgment, endeavoring especially to indicate the locality of the first washing place and the probable route taken by each of the 3 exploring parties. Dr. Young has brought out with great clearness and conclusiveness the evidence that Bradford and Winslow were the authors of the main portion of this volume. Cushman says it was writ by the several actors themselves after their plain and rude manner. See page 36. and all that we know of the Plymouth Pilgrims limits the probabilities of such authorship to Bradford and Winslow. If one were to attempt to designate specifically the source of every portion of the volume, the result must be, I think, as follows. Pages 35 to 38, Dedication to Mr. John Pierce, Robert Cushman. Pages 39 to 40, To the Reader, George Morton. Pages 51 to 57, Certain Useful Advertisements, John Robinson. Pages 1 to 97, A Relation, etc., William Bradford. Pages 98 to 111, A Journey to Packanokik, etc., Edward Winslow. Pages 112 to 117, A Voyage, etc., to Navset, etc., Edward Winslow. Pages 118 to 123, A Journey to Namaschet, etc., Edward Winslow. Pages 124 to 130, A Relation of the Voyage of the Mass, Edward Winslow. Pages 131 to 142, A Letter, etc., Edward Winslow. Pages 143 to 154, Reasons and Considerations, etc., Robert Cushman. These journals of the daily occurrences in the infant colony bear the marks of having been written from day to day on the ground, and therefore claim the highest value as testimony in regard to the facts which they narrate. They were evidently carried to England by Robert Cushman when he returned in the Fortune, and were placed by him in the hands of G. Mourt for publication with his own prefix note to Mr. Pierce, an appended tract persuasive of emigration. It would appear from a passage in Edward Winslow's Good News from New England, which was published in London in 1624, that it was not understood when these journals left their author's hands that they would be printed on reaching London. Winslow says, as in Young's Chronicle of Plymouth, page 355, myself and others in former letters, which came to the press against my will and knowledge, wrote, etc., etc. I am not aware of any other publication than this to which he could thus refer, so that the inference seems unavoidable that these journals were sent over to their friends in London in Ms. and with the original expectation that they would remain so, but were published by Mourt, who says he thought it not amiss to make them more general, with Cushman's advice and assistance, probably on request of the merchant adventurers, in the feeling that such publication would aid in the work of inducing new immigrants to offer themselves to the waiting colony, in which those adventurers had so decided a pecuniary interest. But who was G. Mourt? From his preface, two things are clear. 1. He had been formerly associated with the writers of these journals, Bradford and Winslow, to that degree that he could speak of them as my both known and faithful friends. See page 39. 2. He had always desired and was now intending soon to immigrate in person to join the company in New Plymouth, inasmuch as he says, myself then much desired and shortly hope to effect, if the Lord will, the putting to of my shoulder in this hopeful business. See page 39. If in this case, as in each similar instance in the volume, the initials only had been given and we were simply called upon to interpret G.M., no one probably would hesitate to read them George Morton, inasmuch as there was no other member of the Leyden Plymouth Company, to all appearance, so likely as he was to have done such a work. He had joined them at least as early as 1612. He had been entrusted with public employment on their behalf. He seems to have been in London as an agent for them while those negotiations were going on with Weston and others which resulted in the sailing of the Mayflower. He himself sailed with his family for New Plymouth in the Anne about the last of April in the following year. He is the only G.M. of whom these things were true. In fact, the only G.M. of any sort known as being in their company of whom they could be true. Unless we take the ground, then, that the difference between Mourt and Morton is sufficient to overturn these probabilities by suggesting another of greater weight, we shall inevitably come to the conclusion which was reached by Dr. Young, Cron. Plym. page 113, that G. Mourt was none other than George Morton. Mr. Hunter indeed suggests, Founders of New Plymouth, page 122, that there were two Puritan families then in England whose names approached nearer in orthography to Mourt than Morton does, viz. Mourt in Lancashire and Moult in Derbyshire, but the fact that no person of either of these families is known to have had such intercourse with the Pilgrim Fathers and such connection with their history as are essential to the requisitions of this case must necessarily be fatal to any inference such as he suggests might be possible in regard to them, and it is only needful to infer some whim of the moment on his part, possibly some desire of disguise, or some unnoticed and uncorrected blunder of the printer here, such as plentifully occurs elsewhere in the volume, to account for the abbreviated form in which the name appears, so that we may safely set it down as reasonably established that George Morton was the procurer in London of the publication of this volume and its introducer to the English reader. It may be asked why, if his father had this responsible connection with this relation, did not Nathaniel Morton refer to the fact in his memorial? To this it may be replied that George Morton had probably been dead more than 40 years when Nathaniel Morton wrote the memorial, that Nathaniel at the time of his father's death was a child of scarcely more than 11 years of age, that the son had even lost the memory of the day of the month of June 1624 in which the decease of his father took place, and that therefore much definite reference would not be natural. I am inclined to think, however, that there may be an actual, though vague, allusion to G. Mourt's preface to the relation in what Nathaniel does say in the memorial of his father. I put the two sentences in parallel, thus. End of section 2.
Section 3 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Christine Rottger, January 1st, 2026, Westford, Massachusetts. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. Introduction by the editor, continued. I submit the theory that the author of the memorial had in mind, in writing this sentence, the address of his father to the reader as quoted above. I wish I knew more of George Morton. It is not for want of journeyings often that I do not. He arrived at Plymouth in the Anne in July 1623, bringing with him his wife Juliana and these 5 children, namely, 1. Nathaniel, born, say, May 1613. 2. Patience, born, say, February 1615. 3. John, born, say, November 1616. 4. Sarah, born, say, May 1618. 5. Ephraim, born, say, June 1623. The first 4 are supposed to have been born in Leyden. There's a tradition that Ephraim was born on the passage over. George Morton lived less than a year after his arrival. His son Nathaniel, in his New England's Memorial, Cambridge, Northeast, 1669, page 48, says of him, Mr. George Morton was a pious, gracious servant of God, and very faithful in whatsoever public employment he was betrusted withal, and unfeigned well-willer, and according to his sphere and condition, a suitable promoter of the common good and growth of the plantation of New Plymouth, laboring to still the discontents that sometimes would arise amongst some spirits by occasion of the difficulties of these new beginnings. But it pleased God to put a period to his days soon after his arrival in New England, not surviving a full year after his coming ashore. With much comfort and peace he fell asleep in the Lord in the month of June, Anno Domini 1624. Going back to England, the next earlier trace which we have of George Morton must depend upon the very question just now considered. If he were G. Mourt, then we find him in London in 1621 through 1622, acting in some capacity of public service for the Leyden and Plymouth peoples. The next earlier trace occurs in a letter of John Robinson from Leyden to John Carver in England under the date of 25th May or June 1620, in which Mr. Robinson mentions incidentally that Mr. Weston would come to George Morton and inquire news of him about things, as if he had scarce been some accessory unto it. Bradford's History, Plymouth Plantation, 48. Whether this coming took place in London or in Leyden, the letter gives no data for surely determining, though for the reasons that Weston's residence was in London, though he had visited Leyden a few months before, and that Mr. Robinson prefixes his account by saying, "I have heard that," etc., etc., as if that which he relates had happened further from his own immediate observation than the city where he was then resident. I incline to the judgment that Weston came to George Morton in London, and that the latter was therefore one of those agents who were sent over to England whose names are not given. Bradford's History, Plymouth Plantation, 45, and was therefore officially in England at that time. Going back still further for the next trace, over a chasm of 8 years, we strike the Dutch record of the marriage in Leyden, 15 or 25th December 1612, of Edward Pickering, a merchant from London, with Machen Stews, Mary Stowers, and with George Morton present as a witness. 5 months earlier, we reach the record of the marriage of the man himself as follows. George Morton, merchant from York in England, accompanied by Thomas Morton, his brother, and Roger Wilson, his acquaintance, with Juliana Carpenter, maid from Bath in England. Footnote. Others of this Carpenter family are down in these fame records as from Rington, England, which is a little village some 15 miles a little south of west from Bath in Somersetshire. End footnote. Accompanied by Alexander Carpenter, her father, and Alice Carpenter, her sister, and Anna Robinson, her acquaintance. Footnote. This Anna does not appear to have been a member of the family of the great and good pastor of this Leyden flock. At least no one with that Christian name is in the list of his household. End footnote. The banns were published 6th or 16th July 1612. The marriage took place July 23rd or August 2nd, 1612. The clue here given of residence in the north of England I have failed to follow to any comfortable certainty of origin. The indefatigable antiquary of York, Mr. William Paver, has hunted for me the records of that shire thus far in vain, writing, "I very much regret to have to inform you that, after a long and painstaking search, I have not been able to find anything relating to George Morton." It is possible indeed that the suggestion which Mr. Hunter throws out, Founders of New Plymouth, page 124, that this George Morton may have been the George hitherto unaccounted for in the family of Anthony Morton of Bawtry, one of the historical families of England, and that from Romanist lineage he so far departed from the spirit and principles of his family as to have fallen into the ranks of the Protestant Puritans and Separatists, may be true. Mr. Hunter adds, "The conjecture is perhaps too bold and too improbable, but it is easier to say so than to inform us what became of this prominent member of a very eminent family. I trust the researches of the not distant future may settle the question and reveal the point of contact between this pilgrim and the lineage in the fatherland." I am able to add a few meager notes in regard to the descendants of George Morton in New England, mainly in one line of descent, which I set down here rather as hooks upon which others may, perhaps, be stimulated to hang further researches, than as aspiring in the humblest degree to the character of a genealogy of the family. George Morton, merchant, York, England, 23rd July or 3rd August 1612, married at Leyden, Holland, Juliana, daughter of Alexander Carpenter of Rington, Somersetshire, England. He died Plymouth, New England, June 1623. She died 19 February or 29 February 1665 or 1666 at age 81. Had 5 children, namely 1 Nathaniel, 2 Patience, 3 John, 4 Sarah, and 5 Ephraim. Nathaniel, born 1613, died 29 June or 9 July 1685, married first. 1635, Lydia Cooper, died 23rd September or 4th October 1673. Second, Anne Templar, died 26 December or 5 January 1690 or 1691. Had 8 children, namely 1 Remember 1637, 2 Mercy, 3 Lydia, 4 Elizabeth, 3rd May or 13th May 1652, 5 Joanna, 9th November or 19th November 1654, 6 Hannah, 7 Eleazar, died young, 8th Nathaniel, died young. Patience, born 1615, married 1633, John Founts, had 9 children, namely 1 Priscilla, married Joseph Warren, 2 Mary, 15th July or 25th July 1658, married William Harlow, 3 Patience, 20th November or 30th November 1661, married John Holmes, 4 Sarah, 26 February or 8 March 1663 or 1664, married Edward Doughty, 5 Thomas, born about 1647, 6 Elizabeth, born 23rd March or 2nd April 1648, died next year, 7 Mercy, 19th April or 20th April 1651. On 20th December or 8 January 1667 or 1668, married Nathaniel Holmes. 8 John, died 29 November or 9 December 1654. 9 Joseph, born 14 May or 24th May 1653, died 18th January or 28th January 1687. John, born 1615, married Lettice, ? Had 9 children, namely 1 John, died young, 2 John, 3 Deborah, 4 Mary, 5 Martha, 6 Hannah, 7 Esther, 8 and 9 Manasseh and Ephraim, twins. Sarah, born 1618, 20th December or 30th December 1644, married as second wife George Bonham. Had probably 5 children, namely 1 Ruth, 28th November or 8th December 1666, married Robert Barron. 2 Patience, 28th December or 7th January 1670 or 1671, married Richard Willis. 3 Sarah, born 4th December or 14th December 1649, died early in 1650. 4 Sarah, born 12 January or 22 January 1651 or 1652, probably died soon. 5 Sarah, born 10 December or 20th December 1653, died 28th April or 9th May 1704 at age 86. Ephraim, born 1623, died 7th September or 17th September 1693, married 1 18th November or 28th November 1644, Ann Cooper, died 1st September or 10th September 1691. 2 October 1692, widow Mary Harlow, by the first wife, had 9 children, namely Ephraim, born 27th January or 6th February 1648 or 1649, died 18th February or 29th February 1731 or 1732. Rebecca, born 15th March or 25th March 1651. 3. Josiah, born 1653. George, he sleeps on Burial Hill in Plymouth with this inscription: "Here lies ye body of Deacon George Morton, who August 2nd, 1727, in year 82nd year of his age." 5. Nathaniel. 6. Eleazar. 7. Thomas. 8. Patience, married John Nelson. 9. Mercy. Eleazar married Rebecca, received from his father by will in Plymouth record of date 27th September or 6 October 1693, all his interest in the 16-shilling purchase so-called in Middleborough, and 1/3 of his residual personal estate. Had 4 children, namely 1 Eleazar, 2 Anne, 3 Nathaniel, 4 Rebecca. Nathaniel married 1720 Rebecca Ellis, widow of Mordecai. She married Ellis in 1715, and daughter of Thomas Clark. They had 4 children, namely 1 Elizabeth, 2 Nathaniel, born 1723, 3 Eleazar, 4 Ichabod. The father was lost at sea while still young, and his widow married 1730 for her 3rd husband, Thomas Swift of Sandwich, by whom she had numerous issue. Ichabod married Deborah, who died 17th November 1789 at age 59, lived in Middleborough, and was the 10th deacon of the Congregational Church there, where he died 10th May 1809 at age 85. He had 6 sons, namely 1 Eleazar, 2 Elisha, 3 Ichabod, 4 John, 5 Nathaniel, 6 Mordecai. Nathaniel, 1749, married Martha Tupper and had 5 children, namely 1 Rebecca, 2 Nathaniel, 3 Martha, 4 Elizabeth, 5 Job. He lived first in Middleborough, but removed thence to Freetown, on the neck between Long Pond and Assawampset and Quiticus, where he accumulated a large property, leaving each of his children a farm, and still holding 4 or 5 farms at his death. His son Job lived on his land and reared a large family of boys. Nathaniel, born 1st June 1753, died 18th November 1832 at age 79. 19th March 1782, married Mary Carey, 3rd child of Eleazar of Bridgewater, son of Jonathan, son of Jonathan, son of John, from Somersetshire, England. Born 11 April 1756, died 9th August 1835 at age 79. They had 2 children, namely 1 Marcus, 2 Mary. Marcus, born 19th February 1781, died 6th February 1864 at age 79. 23 December 1807, married Charlotte Dodges of Taunton. They had 12 children, namely 1 Joanna Maria, born 28th October 1808, married William T. Hawes, New Bedford. 2 Charlotte, born 9 July 1810, died 15 October 1814. 3 Lydia Mason, born 29th June 1812, married Reverend Henry Lee, D.D., now Bishop of Iowa. 4 Nathaniel, born 16 April 1814, died 10 May 1814. 5 Charlotte, born 19th April 1815, married Samuel Watson, Esquire, Nashville, Tennessee. 6 Sarah Carey, born 31 March 1817, married Willard Lovering, Esquire, Taunton. 7 Marcus, born 8 April 1819, married Abby Hoppin of Providence, Rhode Island. 8 Nathaniel, born 3rd December 1821, married Harriet, daughter of Honorable Francis Bayleys of Taunton. Died 12 February 1856. 9 James Hodges, born 21st June 1824, married Elizabeth, daughter of Honorable George Ashman of Springfield. 10. Susan Tillingsaft, born 16 April 1826, married M. Day Kimball, Esquire, Boston. 11. Frances Wood, born 17th January 1828, married Charles Henry French of Andover, Mass. 12. Emily Matilda, born 10 November 1831, married Daniel Dawes of Brooklyn, New York. Mary, born 28 September 1785, died 16 October 1822 at age 37. 30 December 1812, married as his second wife, Reverend Elijah Dexter of Plimpton. Fifth child of Dia Elijah of Rochester, Mass., who was fourth child of Dia Seth, who was 11th child of Benjamin, who was 7th child of William, who was almost certainly a son of Farmer Thomas of Lynn and Sandwich. They had 4 children, namely 1. Nathaniel Morton, born 28 September 1814, died 18 September 1838 at age 24. Elijah, born 31st August 1816, died 1st September 1816. 3. David Brainerd, born 18 October 1817, died same day. 4. Henry Martin, born 13 August 1821, died 19th November 1844. Married Emmeline, second daughter of Simeon Palmer of Boston. Has had 1 Henry Morton, born 12 July 1846. 2. Winifred, born 1st July 1849, died next day. 3. Lizzie Clarendon, born 20th August 1851, died 31st December 1861. 4. Mary Palmer, born 21st November 1856, died 29th October 1861. Concerning not a few of those whose names are here set down, many worthy and honorable deeds in church and state might be recorded, as also of others known to be from the same stock, but of whose point of contact with the family tree I am not sure. It is greatly to be desired that some competent person should enrich the genealogical histories of New England with a complete and accurate record of the descendants of G. Mourt on these shores. H.M.D. Hillside, Roxbury, 15th July, 1865. End of section 3.
Section 4 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by MamaPhish. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. To his much respected friend, Mr. John Pierce. Good friend, as we cannot but account it an extraordinary blessing of God in directing our course of these parts, after we came out of our native country, for that we had the happiness to be possessed of the comforts we receive by the benefit of one of the most pleasant, most healthful, and most fruitful parts of the world. So must we acknowledge the same blessing to be multiplied upon our whole company, for that we obtain the honor to receive allowance and approbation of our free possession, and enjoying thereof, under the authority of those thrice honored persons, the President and Council for the affairs of New England, by whose bounty and grace in that behalf, all of us are tied to dedicate our best service unto them as those under his majesty, that we owe it unto, whose noble endeavors in their actions the God of heaven and earth multiply to his glory and their own eternal comforts. As for this poor relation, I pray you to accept it as being writ by the several actors themselves, after their plain and rude manner. Therefore, doubt nothing of the truth thereof. If it be defective in anything, it is their ignorance, that are better acquainted with planting than writing. If it satisfy those that are well affected to the business, it is all I care for. Sure, I am the place we are in, and the hopes that are apparent cannot but suffice any that will not desire more than enough. Neither is there want of aught among us, but company to enjoy the blessings so plentifully bestowed upon the inhabitants that are here. While I was writing this, I had almost forgot that I had but the recommendation of the relation itself to your further consideration, and therefore I will end without saying more, save that I shall always rest from Plymouth in New England. Yours, in the way of friendship, R.G. End of section 4.
Section 5 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by ShrimpPhish. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth by Edward Winslow. To the Reader. Courteous reader, be entreated to make a favorable construction of my forwardness in publishing these ensuing discourses, the desire of carrying the gospel of Christ into those foreign parts, amongst those people that as yet have had no knowledge nor taste of God, as also to procure unto themselves and others a quiet and comfortable habitation, where, amongst other things, the inducements unto these undertakers of the then hopeful and now experimentally known good enterprise for plantation in New England, to set afoot and prosecute the same, and, though it fared with them, as it is common to the most actions of this nature, that the first attempts prove difficult, as the sequel more at large expresseth, yet it hath pleased God, eve beyond our expectation, in so short a time, to give hope of letting some of them see, though some he hath taken out of this vale of tears, some grounds of hope of the accomplishment of both those ends by them at first propounded. And as myself then much desired, and shortly hope to effect, if the Lord will, the putting to of my shoulder in this hopeful business, and in the meantime, these relations coming to my hand from my both known and faithful friends, on whose writings I do much rely, I thought it not amiss to make them more general, hoping of a cheerful proceeding, both of adventurers and planters, entreating that the example of the Honorable Virginia and Bermudas companies encountering with so many disasters, and that for divers years together, with an unwearied resolution, the good effects whereof are now eminent, may prevail as a spur of preparation also touching this no less hopeful country, though yet an infant, the extent and commodities whereof are as yet not fully known, after time will unfold more. Such as desire to take knowledge of things may inform themselves by this ensuing treatise, and if they please also by such as have been there a first and second time, my hearty prayer to God is that the event of this and all other honorable and honest undertakings may be for the furtherance of the kingdom of Christ, the enlargening of the bounds of our sovereign Lord King James, and the good and profit of those who either by purse or person or both are agents in the same. So I take leave and rest. Thy friend, G. Mourt. End of section 5.
Section 6 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. Certain useful advertisements sent in a letter written by a discreet friend. certain useful advertisements sent in a letter written by a discreet friend unto the planters in New England at their first settings, who earnestly desireth the prosperity of that their new plantation. Loving and Christian friends, I do heartily and in the Lord salute you all, as being they with whom I am present in my best affection and most earnest longings after you, though I be constrained for a while to be bodily absent from you. I say constrained, God knowing how willingly, and much rather than otherwise, I would have borne my part with you in this first brunt, were I not by strong necessity held back for the present. Make account of me in the meanwhile, as of a man divided in myself with great pain, and, as natural bonds set aside, having my better part with you. And though I doubt not but in your godly wisdoms you both foresee and resolve upon that which concerneth your present state and condition, both severally and jointly, yet have I thought but my duty to add some further spur of provocation unto them who run already, if not because you need it, yet because I owe it in love and duty. And first, as we are daily to renew our repentance with God, special for our sins known, and general for our unknown trespasses, so doth the Lord call us, in a singular manner, upon occasions of such difficulty and danger as lieth upon you, to a both more narrow search and careful reformation of our ways in his sight, lest he, calling to remembrance our sins forgotten by us, or unrepented of, take advantage against us, and in judgment leave us for the same to be swallowed up in one danger or other. Whereas, on the contrary, sin being taken away by earnest repentance and the pardon thereof from the Lord, sealed up unto a man's conscience by his Spirit, great shall be his security and peace in all dangers, sweet his comforts in all distresses, with happy deliverance from all evil, whether in life or in death. Now, next, after this heavenly peace with God and our own consciences, we are carefully to provide for peace with all men, what in us lieth, especially with our associates, and for that end watchfulness must be had, that we neither at all in ourselves do give, no, nor easily take offence, being given by others. Woe be unto the world for offences, for though it be necessary, considering the malice of Satan and man's corruption, that offences come, yet woe unto the man or woman, either by whom the offence cometh, saith Christ, Matthew 18, verse 7. And if offences, in the unseasonable use of things in themselves indifferent, be more to be feared than death itself, as the Apostle teacheth, 1 Corinthians 9, verse 15, how much more in things simply evil, in which neither honour of God nor love of man is thought worthy to be regarded. Neither yet is it sufficient that we keep ourselves by the grace of God from giving offence, except withal we be armed against the taking of them when they are given by others. For how unperfect and lame is the work of grace in that person who wants charity to cover a multitude of offences, as the Scriptures speak. Neither are you to be exhorted to this grace only upon the common grounds of Christianity, which are that persons ready to take offence either want charity to cover offences, or wisdom duly to weigh human frailty, or lastly are gross, though close hypocrites, as Christ our Lord teacheth, Matthew 7, verses 1, 2, and 3, as indeed in mine own experience few or none have been found which sooner give offence than such as easily take it. Neither have they ever proved sound and profitable members in societies which have nourished in themselves that touchy humour. But besides these, there are divers special motives provoking you above others to great care and conscience this way. As first, you are many of you strangers, as to the persons, so to the infirmities one of another, and so stand in need of more watchfulness this way, lest when such things fall out in men and women, as you suspected not, you be inordinately affected with them, which doth require at your hands much wisdom and charity for the covering and preventing of incident offences that way. And lastly, your intended course of civil community will minister continual occasion of offence, and will be as fuel for that fire, except you diligently quench it with brotherly forbearance. And if taking of offence causelessly or easily at men's doings be so carefully to be avoided, how much more heed is to be taken that we take not offence at God himself, which yet we certainly do so oft, as we do murmur at his providence in our crosses, or bear impatiently such afflictions as wherewith he pleaseth to visit us. Store we up, therefore, patience against the evil day, without which we take offence at the Lord himself in his holy and just works. A fourth thing there is carefully to be provided for, to wit, that, with your common employments, you join common affections, truly bent upon the general good, avoiding, as a deadly plague of your both common and special comfort, all retiredness of mind for proper advantage, and all singularly affected any manner of way. Let every man repress in himself, and the whole body in each person, as so many rebels against the common good, all private respects of men's selves, not sorting with the general conveniency. And as men are careful not to have a new house shaken with any violence, before it be well settled, and the parts firmly knit, so be you, I beseech you, brethren, much more careful, that the house of God, which you are, and are to be not shaken with unnecessary novelties, or other oppositions at the first settling thereof. Lastly, whereas you are to become a body politic, using amongst yourselves civil government, and are not furnished with any persons of special eminency above the rest, to be chosen by you into office of government, let your wisdom and godliness appear, not only in choosing such persons as do entirely love, and will diligently promote the common good, but also in yielding unto them all due honour and obedience in their lawful administrations, not beholding in them the ordinariness of their persons, but God's ordinance for your good, nor being like unto the foolish multitude, who more honour the gay coat, than either the virtuous mind of the man, or glorious ordinance of the Lord. But you know better things, and that the image of the Lord's power and authority, which the magistrate beareth, is honourable, in how mean persons soever. And this duty you both may the more willingly, and ought the more conscionably to perform, because you are at least, for the present, to have only them for your ordinary governors, which yourselves shall make choice of for that work. Sundry other things of importance I could put you in mind of, and of those before mentioned in more words, but I will not so far wrong your godly minds as to think you heedless of these things, there being also diverse among you so well able to admonish both themselves and others of what concerneth them. These few things, therefore, and the same in few words, I do earnestly commend unto your care and conscience, joining therewith my daily incessant prayers unto the Lord, that he who hath made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all rivers of waters, and whose providence is over all his works, especially over all his dear children for good, would so guide and guard you in your ways, as inwardly by his Spirit, so outwardly by the hand of his power, as that both you and we also, for and with you, may have, after matter of praising his name, all the days of your and our lives. Fare you well in him in whom you trust, and in whom I rest. An unfeigned well-willer of your happy success in this hopeful voyage, I.R. End of section 6. Section 7 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A relation. A relation or journal of the proceedings of the plantation settled at Plymouth in New England. Wednesday, the 6th of September, the wind coming east-northeast, a fine small gale, we loosed from Plymouth, having been kindly entertained and courteously used by divers friends there dwelling, and after many difficulties in boisterous storms, at length, by God's providence, upon the 9th of November following, by break of the day, we espied land, which we deemed to be Cape Cod, and so afterward it proved. And the appearance of it much comforted us, especially seeing so goodly a land, and wooded to the brink of the sea. It caused us to rejoice together and praise God that had given us once again to see land. And thus we made our course south-southwest, purposing to go to a river 10 leagues to the south of the Cape, but at night, the wind being contrary, we put round again for the bay of Cape Cod, and upon the 11th of November we came to an anchor in the bay, which is a good harbour and pleasant bay, circled round, except in the entrance, which is about 4 miles over from land to land, compassed about to the very sea with oaks, pines, juniper, sassafras, and other sweet wood. It is a harbour wherein 1,000 sail of ships may safely ride. There we relieved ourselves with wood and water and refreshed our people, while our shallop was fitted to coast the bay to search for an habitation. There was the greatest store of fowl that ever we saw. And every day we saw whales playing hard by us, of which in that place, if we had instruments and means to take them, we might have made a very rich return, which to our great grief we wanted. Our master and his mate and other experienced in fishing professed we might have made 3,000 or 4,000 pounds worth of oil. They preferred it before Greenland whale fishing, and purpose the next winter to fish for whale here. For cod we essayed, but found none. There is good store, no doubt, in their season. Neither got we any fish all the time we lay there, but some few little ones on the shore. We found great mussels, and very fat, and full of sea-pole, but we could not eat them, for they made us all sick that did eat, as well sailors as passengers. They caused to cast and scour, but they were soon well again. The bay is so round and circling that before we could come to anchor, we went round all the points of the compass. We could not come near the shore by 3/4 of an English mile, because of shallow water, which was a great prejudice to us, for our people, going on shore, were forced to wade a bow-shoot or two in going aland, which caused many to get colds and coughs, for it was nigh times freezing cold weather. This day before we came to harbour, observing some not well affected to unity and concord, but gave some appearance of faction, it was thought good there should be an association and agreement, that we should combine together in one body, and to submit to such government and governors, as we should by common consent agree to make and choose, and set our hands to this that follows word for word. In the name of God, Amen, we, whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign, Lord King James, by the grace of God, of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King, Defender of the Faith, etc., having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith, and honour of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these present solemnly and mutually, in the presence of God and one of another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof to enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, offices, from time to time, as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience, in witness whereof we have hereunder subscribed our names. Cape Cod, 11th of November, in the year of the reign of our sovereign Lord King James, of England, France, and Ireland, 18, and of Scotland, 54, Anno Domini 1620. Footnote: the names of the signers of this most interesting and significant document were first printed by Nathaniel Morton in 1669 in the New England Memorial. As corrected by Prince and illustrated by Bradford in the appendix to his history, they stand as follows, with the number represented by each and the names of their families, viz. 1. John Carver, 8. Catherine his wife, Desire Minter, John Howland, Roger Wilder, men servants, William Lathan, Jasper Moore, boys, a maidservant. 2. William Bradford, 2. Dorothy his wife. 3. Edward Winslow, 5. Elizabeth his wife, George Sewell, Elias Story, men servants, Ellen Moore. 4. William Brewster, 6. Mary his wife, Love, Wrestling, sons, Richard Moore, boys. 5. Isaac Allerton, 6. Mary his wife, Bartholomew Remember Mary, children, John Hook, boy. 6. Miles Standish, 2. Rose his wife. 7. John Alden, 1. 8. Samuel Fuller, 1. His servant William Button had died at sea. 9. Christopher Martin, 4. His wife, Solomon Brower, John Langamore, men servants. 10. William Mullins, 5. His wife, Joseph, Priscilla, children, Robert Carter, servants. 11. William White, 5. Susanna his wife, Resolved, son, William Holbeck, Edward Thompson, men servants. 12. Richard Warren, 1. 13. John Howland, of John Carver's family above. 14. Stephen Hopkins, 8. Elizabeth his wife, Giles, Constance, Damaris, Oceanus, buried at sea. Children: Edward Doughton, Edward Lester, menservants. 15. Edward Tilley, 4. Anne his wife, Henry Sampson, Humility Cooper, children in their care. 16. John Tilley, 3. His wife, Elizabeth, daughter. 17. Francis Cook, 2. John his son. 18. Thomas Rogers, 2. Joseph his son. 19. Thomas Tinker, 3. His wife, son. 20. John Rigdale, 2. Alice his wife. 21. Edward Fuller, 3. Anne his wife, Samuel, son. 22. John Turner, 3. Sons. 23. Francis Eaton, 3. Sarah his wife, Samuel, son. 24. James Chilton, 3. His wife, Mary, daughter. 25. John Craxton, 2. John his son. 26. John Billington, 4. Ellen his wife, John, Francis, sons. 27. Moses Fletcher, 1. 28. John Goodman, 1. 29. Diggory Priest, 1. 30. Thomas Williams, 1. 31. Gilbert Winslow, 1. 32. Edward Margeson, 1. 33. Peter Brown, 1. 34. Richard Britteridge, 1. 35. George Sewell, of Edward Winslow's family above. 36. Richard Clark, 1. 37. Richard Gardner, 1. 38. John Allerton, 1. 39. Thomas English, 1. 40. Edward Doughton, of Stephen Hopkins's family above. 41. Edward Lester, D.O. This list of Mortons adds up to 41 signers, who, according to Bradford's list at this date, represented exactly 100 persons. Bradford adds, History of the Plymouth Plantation, 450, quote, "There were also other 2 seamen hired to stay a year here in the country, William Trevor and one Eli. But when their time was out, they both returned." End quote. As they were thus to be merely temporary residents, they were not probably requested to sign a compact which looked forward towards some permanent government here. It will be noticed that while one of Carver's men-servants, one of Winslow's, and both of Hopkins's affixed their names to this paper, the other servant of Carver, Roger Wilder, the other of Winslow, Elias Story, with 2 of Christopher Martin, Solomon Prower, and John Langmore, the 2 of William White, William Holbeck, and Edward Thompson, and that of William Mullins, Robert Carter, 7 in all, did not sign it. Some have conjectured that the names of all the adult male members of the company not found there should be added to Morton's list, but as keeper, in his official capacity, of the public records, from 1645 to 1685, there is a strong probability that the secretary had in his possession, and copied from, the original compact with its actual signatures, a document which, from the nature of the case, they would have taken pains to preserve. It is possible that such of the servants only as, on the one hand, specially deserved the honour, or, on the other, specially needed the restraint of becoming parties to such an agreement, were invited to sign it. To the former of which classes one might fancy John Howland to belong, and to the latter Edward Doughton and Edward Lister. It is more probable, as Bradford says, History of the Plymouth Plantation, 450 to 52, these 7 all died soon, that they were ailing at this time and so out of the way at the signing. Counting the 2 hired seamen, the entire Mayflower Company, as distinct from her crew, consisted thus of 102 persons. End footnote. End of section 7. Section 8 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A Relation, Part 2. The same day, so soon as we could, we set ashore 15 or 16 men, well armed, with some to fetch wood, for we had none left, as also to see what the land was, and what inhabitants they could meet with. They found it to be a small neck of land. On this side where we lay is the bay, and the further side the sea, the ground or earth, sand hills, much like the downs in Holland, but much better, the crust of the earth a spit's depth, excellent black earth, all wooded with oaks, pines, sassafras, juniper, birch, holly, vines, some ash, walnut, the wood for the most part open and without underwood, fit either to go or ride in. At night our people returned, but found not any person nor habitation, and laded their boat with juniper, which smelled very sweet and strong, and of which we burnt the most part of the time we lay there. Monday, the 13th of November, we unshipped our shallop and drew her on land, to mend and repair her, having been forced to cut her down in bestowing her betwixt the decks, and she was much opened with the peoples lying in her, which kept us long there, for it was 16 or 17 days before the carpenter had finished her. Our people went on shore to refresh themselves, and our women to wash, as they had great need, but whilst we lay thus still, hoping our shallop would be ready in 5 or 6 days at the furthest, but our carpenter made slow work of it, so that some of our people, impatient of delay, desired for our better furtherance to travel by land into the country, which was not without appearance of danger, not having the shallop with them, nor means to carry provision, but on their backs, to see whether it might be fit for us to seat in or no, and the rather because as we sailed into the harbour there seemed to be a river opening itself into the mainland. The willingness of the persons was liked, but the thing itself, in regard of the danger, was rather permitted than approved, and so, with cautions, directions, and instructions, 16 men were set out, with every man his musket, sword, and corselet, under the conduct of Captain Miles Standish, unto whom was adjoined for counsel and advice William Bradford, Stephen Hopkins, and Edward Tilley. End of section 8. Section 9 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A Relation, Part 3. Wednesday, the 15th of November, they were set ashore, and when they had ordered themselves in the order of a single file, and marched about the space of a mile, by the sea they espied 5 or 6 people, with a dog coming towards them, who were savages, who, when they saw them, ran into the wood and whistled the dog after them, etc. First they supposed them to be Master Jones, the master and some of his men, for they were ashore and knew of their coming, but after they knew them to be Indians, they marched after them into the woods, lest other of the Indians should lie in ambush. But when the Indians saw our men following them, they ran away with might and main, and our men turned out of the wood after them, for it was the way they intended to go, but they could not come near them. They followed them that night about 10 miles by the trace of their footings, and saw how they had come the same way they went, and at a turning perceived how they run up an hill, to see whether they followed them. At length night came upon them, and they were constrained to take up their lodging. So they set forth 3 sentinels, and the rest, some kindled a fire, and others fetched wood, and there held our rendezvous that night. In the morning, so soon as we could see the trace, we proceeded on our journey, and had the track until we had compassed the head of a long creek, and there they took into another wood, and we after them, supposing to find some of their dwellings. But we marched through boughs and bushes, and under hills and valleys, which tore our very armour in pieces, yet could meet with none of them, nor their houses, nor find any fresh water, which we greatly desired, and stood in need of. For we brought neither beer nor water with us, and our victuals was only biscuit and a little bottle of aquavite, so as we were sore athirst. About 10 o'clock we came into a deep valley full of brush, woodgale, and long grass, through which we found little paths or tracts, and there we saw a deer, and found springs of fresh water, of which we were heartily glad, and sat us down and drunk our first New England water, with as much delight as ever we drank drink in all our lives. When we had refreshed ourselves, we directed our course full south, that we might come to the shore, which within a short while after we did, and there made a fire, that they in the ship might see where we were, as we had direction, and so marched on towards this supposed river. And as we went in another valley, we found a fine clear pond of fresh water, being about a musket-shot broad, and twice as long. There grew also many small vines, and fowl and deer haunted there. There grew much sassafras. From thence we went on and found much plain ground, about 50 acres, fit for the plough, and some signs where the Indians had formerly planted their corn. After this, some thought it best, for nearness of the river, to go down and travel on the sea sands, by which means some of our men were tired and lagged behind. So we stayed and gathered them up, and struck into the land again, where we found a little path to certain heaps of land, one whereof was covered with old mats, and had a wooden thing like a mortar whelmed on the top of it, and an earthen pot laid in a little hole at the end thereof. We, musing what it might be, digged, and found a bow, and as we thought arrows, but they were rotten. We supposed there were many other things, but because we deemed them graves, we put in the bow again, and made it up as it was, and left the rest untouched, because we thought it would be odious unto them to ransack their sepulchres. We went on further, and found new stubble, of which they had gotten corn this year, and many walnut trees full of nuts, and great store of strawberries, and some vines. Passing thus a field or two, which were not great, we came to another, which had also been new gotten, and there we found where an house had been, and 4 or 5 old planks laid together. Also we found a great kettle, which had been some ship's kettle, and brought out of Europe. There was also an heap of sand, made like the former, but it was newly done. We might see how they had paddled it with their hands, which we digged up, and in it we found a little old basket, full of fair Indian corn, and digged further, and found a fine, great, new basket full of very fair corn of this year, with some 36 goodly ears of corn, some yellow and some red, and others mixed with blue, which was a very goodly sight. The basket was round and narrow at the top. It held about 3 or 4 bushels, which was as much as 2 of us could lift up from the ground, and was very handsomely and cunningly made. But whilst we were busy about these things, we set our men sentinel in a round ring, all but 2 or 3 which digged up the corn. We were in suspense what to do with it, and the kettle, and at length, after much consultation, we concluded to take the kettle and as much of the corn as we could carry with us, and when our shallop came, if we could find any of the people, and come to parley with them, we would give them the kettle again, and satisfy them for their corn. So we took all the ears, and put a good deal of the loose corn in the kettle for 2 men to bring away on a staff. Besides, they that could put any into their pockets filled the same. The rest we buried again, for we were so laden with armour that we could carry no more. Not far from this place we found the remainder of an old fort, or palisade, which, as we conceived, had been made by some Christians. This was also hard by that place, which we thought had been a river, unto which we went, and found it so to be, dividing itself into 2 arms by an high bank, standing right by the cut or mouth which came from the sea. That which was next unto us was the less. The other arm was more than twice as big, and not unlike to be an harbour for ships. But whether it be a fresh river, or only an indraft of the sea, we had no time to discover, for we had commandment to be out but 2 days. Here also we saw 2 canoes, the one on the one side, the other on the other side. We could not believe it was a canoe, till we came near it, so we returned, leaving the further discovery hereof to our shallop, and came that night back again to the freshwater pond, and there we made our rendezvous that night, making a great fire and a barricado to windward of us, and kept good watch with 3 sentinels all night, every one standing when his turn came, while 5 or 6 inches of match was burning. It proved a very rainy night. End of section 9. Section 10 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A Relation, Part 4. In the morning we took our kettle and sunk it in the pond, and trimmed our muskets, for a few of them would go off because of the wet, and so coasted the wood again to come home, in which we were shrewdly puzzled and lost our way. As we wandered, we came to a tree where a young sprit was bowed down over a bough, and some acorns strewn underneath. Stephen Hopkins said it had been to catch some deer. So, as we were looking at it, William Bradford, being in the rear, when he came, looked also upon it, and as he went about, it gave a sudden jerk up, and he was immediately caught by the leg. It was a very pretty device, made with a rope of their own making, and having a noose as artificially made as any roper in England can make, and as like ours as can be, which we brought away with us. In the end we got out of the wood, and were fallen about 1 mile too high above the creek, where we saw 3 bucks, but we had rather have had one of them. We also did spring 3 couple of partridges, and as we came along by the creek, we saw great flocks of wild geese and ducks, but they were very fearful of us. So we marched some while in the woods, some while on the sands, and other while in the water up to the knees, till at length we came near the ship, and then we shot off our pieces, and the longboat came to fetch us. Master Jones and Master Carver being on the shore, with many of our people, came to meet us. And thus we came both weary and welcome home, and delivered in our corn into the store to be kept for food, for we knew not how to come by any, and therefore were very glad, purposing so soon as we could meet with any of the inhabitants of that place, to make them large satisfaction. This was our first discovery, whilst our shallop was in repairing. Our people did make things as fitting as they could, and time wood in seeking out wood, and helving of tools, and sawing of timber to build a new shallop, but the discommodiousness of the harbour did much hinder us, for we could neither go to nor come from the shore but at high water, which was much to our hindrance and hurt, for oftentimes they waded to the middle of the thigh, and oft to the knees, to go and come from land. Some did it necessarily, and some from their own pleasure, but it brought to the most, if not to all, coughs and colds, the weather proving suddenly cold and stormy, which afterward turned to the scurvy, whereof many died. When our shallop was fit indeed, before she was fully fitted, for there was 2 days' work after bestowed on her, there was appointed some 24 men of our own, and armed, then to go and make a more full discovery of the rivers before mentioned. Master Jones was desirous to go with us, and took such of his sailors as he thought useful for us, so as we were in all about 34 men. We made Master Jones our leader, for we thought it best herein to gratify his kindness and forwardness. When we were set forth, it proved rough weather and crosswinds, so as we were constrained, some in the shallop and others in the longboat, to row to the nearest shore the wind would suffer them to go unto, and then to wade out above the knees. The wind was so strong as the shallop could not keep the water, but was forced to harbour there that night. But we marched 6 or 7 miles further, and appointed the shallop to come to us as soon as they could. It blowed and did snow all that day and night, and froze withal. Some of our people that are dead took the original of their death there. The next day, about 11 o'clock, our shallop came to us, and we shipped ourselves, and the wind being good, we sailed to the river we formerly discovered, which we named Cold Harbour, to which, when we came, we found it not navigable for ships, yet we thought it might be a good harbour for boats, for it flows there 12 foot at high water. We landed our men between the 2 creeks, and marched some 4 or 5 miles by the greater of them, and the shallop followed us. At length night grew on, and our men were tired with marching up and down the steep hills and deep valleys, which lay 1/2 foot thick with snow. Master Jones, wearied with marching, was desirous we should take up our lodging, though some of us would have marched further. So we made there our rendezvous for that night, under a few pine trees, and as it fell out, we got 3 fat geese and 6 ducks to our supper, which we eat with soldiers' stomachs, for we had eaten little all that day. Our resolution was next morning to go up to the head of this river, for we supposed it would prove fresh water, but in the morning our resolution held not, because many liked not the hilliness of the soil and badness of the harbour, so we turned towards the other creek, that we might go over and look for the rest of the corn that we left behind when we were here before. When we came to the creek, we saw the canoe lie on the dry ground, and a flock of geese in the river, at which one made a shot and killed a couple of them, and we launched the canoe and fetched them, and when we had done, she carried us over by 7 or 8 at once. This done, we marched to the place where we had the corn formerly, which place we called Corn Hill, and digged and found the rest, of which we were very glad. We also digged in a place a little further off, and found a bottle of oil. We went to another place, which we had seen before, and digged and found more corn, viz. 2 or 3 baskets full of Indian wheat, and a bag of beans, with a good many of fair wheat ears. Whilst some of us were digging up this, some others found another heap of corn, which they digged up also, so as we had in all about 10 bushels, which will serve us sufficiently for feed. And sure it was God's good providence that we found this corn, for else we know not how we should have done, for we knew not how we should find or meet with any of the Indians, except it be to do us a mischief. Also, we had never, in all likelihood, seen a grain of it, if we had not made our first journey, for the ground was now covered with snow, and so hard frozen, that we were fain with our cutlasses and short swords to hew and carve the ground a foot deep, and then rest it up with levers, for we had forgot to bring other tools. Whilst we were in this employment, foul weather, being towards Master Jones, was earnest to go abroad, but sundry of us desired to make further discovery, and to find out the Indians' habitations. So we sent home with him our weakest people, and some that were sick, and all the corn, and 18 of us stayed still, and lodged there that night, and desired that the shallop might return to us next day, and bring us some mattocks and spades with them. End of section 10. Section 11 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A Relation, Part 5. The next morning we followed certain beaten paths and tracks of the Indians into the woods, supposing they would have led us into some town or houses. After we had gone a while, we light upon a very broad beaten path, well nigh 2 foot broad. Then we lighted all our matches and prepared ourselves, concluding we were near their dwellings, but in the end we found it to be only a path made to drive deer in, when the Indians hunt, as we supposed. When we had marched 5 or 6 miles into the woods, and could find no signs of any people, we returned again another way, and as we came into the plain ground we found a place like a grave, but it was much bigger and longer than any we had yet seen. It was also covered with boards, so as we mused what it should be, and resolved to dig it up, where we found, first a mat, and under that a fair bow, and there another mat, and under that a board, about 3/4 long, finely carved and painted, with 3 tines or brooches on the top, like a crown. Also between the mats we found bowls, trays, dishes, and such like trinkets. At length we came to a fair new mat, and under that 2 bundles, the one bigger, the other less. We opened the greater, and found in it a great quantity of fine and perfect red powder, and in it the bones and skull of a man. The skull had fine yellow hair still on it, and some of the flesh unconsumed. There was bound up with it a knife, a pack needle, and 2 or 3 old iron things. It was bound up in a sailor's canvas cassock, and a pair of cloth breeches. The red powder was a kind of embalmment, and yielded a strong but no offensive smell. It was as fine as any flour. We opened the less bundle likewise, and found of the same powder in it, and the bones and head of a little child. About the legs and other parts of it was bound strings and bracelets of fine white beads. There was also by it a little bow, about 3/4 long, and some other odd knacks. We brought sundry of the prettiest things away with us, and covered the corpse up again. After this we digged in sundry like places, but found no more corn, nor anything else but graves. There was variety of opinions amongst us about the embalmed person. Some thought it was an Indian lord and king. Others said the Indians have all black hair, and never any was seen with brown or yellow hair. Some thought it was a Christian of some special note which had died amongst them, and they thus buried him to honour him. Others thought they had killed him, and did it in triumph over him. Whilst we were thus ranging and searching, 2 of the sailors, which were newly come on the shore, by chance espied 2 houses, which had been lately dwelt in, but the people were gone. They, having their pieces, and hearing nobody, entered the houses, and took out some things, and durst not stay, but came again and told us. So some 7 or 8 of us went with them, and found how we had gone within a slight shot of them before. The houses were made with long young sapling trees, bended, and both ends stuck into the ground. They were made round like unto an arbour, and covered down to the ground with thick and well-wrought mats, and the door was not over a yard high, made of a mat to open. The chimney was a wide open hole in the top, for which they had a mat to cover it closed when they pleased. One might stand and go upright in them. In the midst of them were 4 little truncheons knocked into the ground, and small sticks laid over, on which they hung their pots, and what they had to seethe. Round about the fire they lay on mats, which are their beds. The houses were double matted, for as they were matted without, so they were within, with newer and fairer mats. In the houses we found wooden bowls, trays, and dishes, earthen pots, hand baskets made of crab shells wrought together, also an English pail or bucket. It wanted a bail, but it had 2 iron ears. There were also baskets of sundry sorts, bigger and some lesser, finer and some coarser. Some were curiously wrought with black and white in pretty works, and sundry other of their household stuff. We found also 2 or 3 deer's heads, one whereof had been newly killed, for it was still fresh. There was also a company of deer's feet stuck up in the houses, hart's horns and eagle's claws, and sundry such-like things there was. Also 2 or 3 baskets full of parched acorns, pieces of fish, and a piece of a broiled herring. We found also a little silk grass, and a little tobacco seed, with some other seeds which we knew not. Without was sundry bundles of flags, and sedge, bulrushes, and other stuff to make mats. There was thrust into an hollow tree 2 or 3 pieces of venison, but we thought it fitter for the dogs than for us. Some of the best things we took away with us, and left the houses standing still as they were. So it growing towards night, and the tide almost spent, we hasted with our things down to the shallop, and got aboard that night, intending to have brought some beads and other things to have left in the houses in sign of peace, and that we meant to truck with them, but it was not done, by means of our hasty coming away from Cape Cod. But so soon as we can meet conveniently with them, we will give them full satisfaction. Thus much of our second discovery. Having thus discovered this place, it was controversial amongst us what to do touching our abode and settling there. Some thought it best for many reasons to abide there. As first, that there was a convenient harbour for boats, though not for ships. Secondly, good corn ground ready to our hands, as we saw by experience in the goodly corn it yielded, which would again agree with the ground, and be naturally seed for the same. Thirdly, Cape Cod was like to be a place of good fishing, for we saw daily great whales of the best kind for oil and bone come close aboard our ship, and in fair weather swim and play about us. There was once one, when the sun shone warm, came and lay above water, as if she had been dead, for a good while together, within half a musket shot of the ship, at which 2 were prepared to shoot, to see whether she would stir or no. He that gave fire first, his musket flew in pieces, both stock and barrel, yet, thanks be to God, neither he nor any man else was hurt with it, though many were thereabout. But when the whale saw her time, she gave a snuff and away. Fourthly, the place was likely to be healthful, secure, and defensible. But the last and especial reason was, that now the heart of winter and unseasonable weather was come upon us, so that we could not go upon coasting and discovery without danger of losing men and boat, upon which would follow the overthrow of all, especially considering what variable winds and sudden storms do there arise. Also cold and wet lodging had so tainted our people, for scarce any of us were free from vehement coughs, as if they should continue long in that estate, it would endanger the lives of many, and breed diseases and infection amongst us. Again, we had yet some beer, butter, flesh, and other such victuals left, which would quickly be all gone, and then we should have nothing to comfort us in the great labour and toil we were like to undergo at the first. It was also conceived, whilst we had competent victuals, that the ship would stay with us, but when that grew low they would be gone, and let us shift as we could. End of section 11. Section 12 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A Relation, Part 6. Others again urged greatly the going of Angum, or Angum, a place 20 leagues off to the northwards, which they had heard to be an excellent harbour for ships, better ground and better fishing. Secondly, for anything we knew, there might be hard by us a far better seat, and it should be a great hindrance to a seat where we should remove again. Thirdly, the water was but in ponds, and it was thought there would be none in summer, or very little. Fourthly, the water there must be fetched up a steep hill, but to omit many reasons and replies used hereabouts, it was in the end concluded to make some discovery within the bay, but in no case so far as Angum. Besides, Robert Coppen, our pilot, made relation of a great navigable river and good harbour in the other headland of this bay, almost right over against Cape Cod, being a right line, not much above 8 leagues distant, in which he had been once, and because that one of the wild men with whom they had some trucking stole a harping iron from them, they called it Thievish Harbour. And beyond that place they were enjoined not to go, whereupon a company was chosen to go out upon a third discovery. Whilst some were employed in this discovery, it pleased God that Mistress White was brought a bed of a son, which was called Peregrine. The first day we, through God's mercy, escaped a great danger by the foolishness of a boy, one of Francis Billington's sons, who, in his father's absence, had got gunpowder, and had shot off a piece or two, and made squibs, and there being a fowling piece, charged in his father's cabin, shot her off in the cabin, there being a little barrel of powder half full, scattered in and about the cabin, the fire being within 4 foot of the bed between the decks, and many flints and iron things about the cabin, and many people about the fire, and yet, by God's mercy, no harm done. Wednesday, the 6th of December, it was resolved our discoverers should set forth, for the day before was too foul weather, and so they did, though it was well o'er the day ere all things could be ready. So 10 of our men were appointed, who were of themselves willing to undertake it, to wit, Captain Standish, Master Carver, William Bradford, Edward Winslow, John Tilley, Edward Tilley, John Holland, and 3 of London, Richard Warren, Stephen Hopkins, and Edward Dodd, and 2 of our seamen, John Alderton and Thomas English, of the ship's company. There went 2 of the master's mates, Master Clark and Master Coppen, the master gunner, and 3 sailors, the narration of which discovery follows, penned by one of the company. Wednesday the 6th of December we set out, being very cold and hard weather. We were a long while after we launched from the ship before we could get clear of a sandy point, which lay within less than a furlong of the same, in which time 2 were very sick, and Edward Tilley had like to have foundered with cold. The gunner was also sick unto death, but hope of trucking made him to go, and so remained all that day and the next night. At length we got clear of the sandy point, and got up our sails, and within an hour or 2 we got under the weather shore, and then had smoother water and better sailing, but it was very cold, for the water froze on our clothes, and made them many times like coats of iron. We sailed 6 or 7 leagues by the shore, but saw neither river nor creek. At length we met with a tongue of land, being flat off from the shore, with a sandy point. We bore up to gain the point, and found there a fair income or road of a bay, being a league over at the narrowest, and some 2 or 3 in length, but we made right over to the land before us, and left the discovery of this income till the next day. As we drew near to the shore, we espied some 10 or 12 Indians, very busy about a black thing. What it was we could not tell, till afterwards they saw us, and ran to and fro, as if they had been carrying something away. We landed a league or 2 from them, and had much ado to put ashore anywhere. It lay so full of flat sands. When we came to shore, we made us a barricado, and got firewood, and set out our sentinels, and betook us to our lodging, such as it was. We saw the smoke of the fire which the savages made that night, about 4 or 5 miles from us. In the morning we divided our company, some 8 in the shallop, and the rest on the shore, went to discover this place. But we found it only to be a bay, without either river or creek coming into it. Yet we deemed it to be as good an harbour as Cape Cod, for they that founded it, and found a ship, might ride in 5-fathom water. We, on the land, found it to be a level soil, but none of the fruitfulest. We saw 2 becks of fresh water, which were the first running streams that we saw in the country, but one might stride over them. We found also a great fish, called a grampus, dead on the sands. They in the shallop found 2 of them also in the bottom of the bay, dead in like sort. They were cast up at high water, and could not get off for the frost and ice. They were some 5 or 6 paces long, and about 2 inches thick of fat, and fleshed like a swine. They would have yielded a great deal of oil, if there had been time and means to have taken it. So we, finding nothing for our turn, both we and our shallop returned. We then directed our course along the sea sands, to the place where we first saw the Indians. When we were there, we saw it was also a grampus, which they were cutting up. They cut it into long rands or pieces, about an ell long, and 2 handful broad. We found here and there a piece scattered by the way, as it seemed for haste. This place the most were minded we should call the Grampus Bay, because we found so many of them there. We followed the track of the Indians' bare feet a good way on the sands. At length we saw where they struck into the woods by the side of a pond. As we went to view the place, one said he thought he saw an Indian house among the trees, so we went up to see. And here we and the shallop lost sight of one another till night, it being now about 9 or 10 o'clock. So we lit on a path, but saw no house, and followed a great way into the woods. End of section 12. Section 13 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth by Edward Winslow. At length we found where corn had been set, but not that year. Anon we found a great burying place, one part whereof was encompassed with a large palazzo like a churchyard, with young spires 4 or 5 yards long, set as close one by another as they could, 2 or 3 foot in the ground. Within it was full of graves, some bigger and some less. Some were also paled about, and others had like an Indian house made over them, but not matted. Those graves were more sumptuous than those at Cornhill, yet we digged none of them up, but only viewed them, and went our way. Without the palazzo were graves also, but not so costly. From this place we went and found more corn ground, but not of this year. As we ranged, we light on 4 or 5 Indian houses which had been lately dwelt in, but they were uncovered, and had no mats about them. Else they were like those we found at Cornhill, but had not been so lately dwelt in. There was nothing left but 2 or 3 pieces of old mats, a little sedge. Also a little further we found 2 baskets full of parched acorns hid in the ground, which we supposed had been corn. When we began to dig the same, we cast earth thereon again, and went our way. All this while we saw no people. We went ranging up and down till the sun began to draw low, and then we hasted out of the woods, that we might come to our shallop, which, when we were out of the woods, we espied a great way off, and called them to come unto us, the which they did as soon as they could, for it was not yet high water. They were exceeding glad to see us, for they feared, because they had not seen us in so long a time, thinking we would have kept by the shore side. So being both weary and faint, for we had eaten nothing all that day, we fell to making our rendezvous, and get firewood, which always cost us a great deal of labour. By that time we had done, and our shallop come to us. It was within night, and we fared upon such victuals as we had, and betook us to our rest, after we had set out our watch. About midnight we heard a great and hideous cry, and our sentinel called, "Arm, arm!" So we bestirred ourselves and shot off a couple of muskets, and noise ceased. We concluded that it was a company of wolves or foxes, for one told us he had heard such a noise in Newfoundland. About 5 o'clock in the morning we began to be stirring, and 2 or 3 which doubted whether their pieces would go off or no, made trial of them, and shot them off, but thought nothing at all. After prayer we prepared ourselves for breakfast, and for a journey, and it being now the twilight in the morning, it was thought meet to carry the things down to the shallop. Some said it was not best to carry the armour down, others said they would be readier, 2 or 3 said they would not carry theirs till they went themselves, but mistrusting nothing at all, as it fell out, the water not being high enough, they laid the things down upon the shore and came up to breakfast. Anon, all upon a sudden, we heard a great and strange cry, which we knew to be the same voices, though they varied their notes. One of our company, being abroad, came running in and cried, "They are men, Indians, Indians!" And withal their arrows came flying amongst us. Our men ran out with all speed to recover their arms, as by the good providence of God they did. In the meantime Captain Miles Standish, having a snappence ready, made a shot, and after him another, after they two had shot. Other two of us were ready, but he wished us not to shoot till we could take aim, for we knew not what need we should have, and there were 4 only of us, which had their arms there ready, and stood before the open side of our barricado, which was first assaulted. They thought it best to defend it, lest the enemy should take it, and our stuff, and so have more advantage against us. Our care was no less for the shallop, but we hoped all the rest would defend it. We called unto them to know how it was with them, and they answered, "Well, well, every one, and be of good courage." We heard 3 of their pieces go off, and the rest called for a firebrand to light their matches. One took a log out of the fire on his shoulder, and went and carried it unto them, which was thought did not a little discourage our enemies. The cry of our enemies was dreadful, especially when our men ran out to recover their arms. Their note was after this manner: "Woth, woke, ha ha, hack woke." Our men were no sooner come to their arms, but the enemy was ready to assault them. There was a lusty man, and no whit less valiant, who was thought to be their captain, stood behind a tree, within half a musket shot of us, and there let his arrows fly at us. He was seen to shoot 3 arrows, which were all avoided, for he at whom the first arrow was aimed saw it and stooped down, and it flew over him. The rest were avoided also. He stood 3 shots of a musket. At length one took, as he said, full aim at him, after which he gave an extraordinary cry, and away they went all. We followed them about a quarter of a mile, but we left 6 to keep our shallop, for we were careful of our business. Then we shouted all together 2 several times, and shot off a couple of muskets, and so returned. This we did, that they might see we were not afraid of them, nor discouraged. Thus it pleased God to vanquish our enemies, and give us deliverance. By their noise we could not guess that they were less than 30 or 40, though some thought that they were many more, yet in the dark of morning we could not so well discern them among the trees, as they could see us by our fireside. We took up 18 of their arrows, which we have sent to England by Master Jones. Some whereof were headed with brass, others with hartshorn, and others with eagle's claws. Many more no doubt were shot, for these we found were almost covered with leaves, yet by the especial providence of God none of them either hit or hurt us, though many came close by us, and on every side of us, and some coats which hung up in our barricado were shot through and through. End of section 13. Section 14 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A Relation, Part 8. So, after we had given God thanks for our deliverance, we took our shallop and went on our journey, and called this place the First Encounter. From hence we intended to have sailed to the aforesaid thievish harbour, if we found no convenient harbour by the way. Having the wind good, we sailed all that day along the coast about 15 leagues, but saw neither river nor creek to put into. After we had sailed an hour or 2, it began to snow and rain, and to be bad weather. About the midst of the afternoon the wind increased, and the seas began to be very rough, and the hinges of the rudder broke, so that we could steer no longer with it. But 2 men, with much ado, were fain to serve with a couple of oars. The seas were grown so great that we were much troubled, and in great danger, and night grew on. Anon Master Coppen bade us be of good cheer. He saw the harbour, as we drew near, the gale being stiff, and we, bearing great sail to get in, split our mast in 3 pieces, and were like to have cast away our shallop. Yet by God's mercy, recovering ourselves, we had the slout with us, and struck into the harbour. Now he that thought that had been the place was deceived, it being a place where not any of us had been before, and coming into the harbour, He that was our pilot did bear up northward, which, if we had continued, we had been cast away. Yet still the Lord kept us, and we bare up for an island before us. And recovering of that island, being compassed about with many rocks, and a dark night growing upon us, it pleased the divine providence that we fell upon a place of sandy ground, where our shallop did ride safe and secure all that night, and coming upon a strange island, kept our watch all night in the rain upon that island. And in the morning we marched about it, and found no inhabitants at all, and here we made our rendezvous all that day, being Saturday, 10th of December. On the Sabbath day we rested, and on Monday we sounded the harbour, and found it a very good harbour for our shipping. We marched also into the land, and found diverse cornfields, and little running brooks, a place very good for situation, so we returned to our ship again, with good news to the rest of our people, which did much comfort their hearts. On the 15th day we weighed anchor, to go to the place we had discovered, and coming within 2 leagues of the land, we could not fetch the harbour, but were fain to put room again towards Cape Cod, our course lying west, and the wind was at northwest, but it pleased God that the next day, being Saturday, the 16th day, the wind came fair, and we put to sea again, and came safely into a safe harbour, and within half an hour the wind changed, so as if we had been let it but a little, we had gone back to Cape Cod. This harbour is a bay greater than Cape Cod, compassed with a goodly land, and in the bay 2 fine islands uninhabited, wherein are nothing but wood, oaks, pines, walnut, beech, sassafras, vines, and other trees which we know not. This bay is a most hopeful place, innumerable store of fowl, and excellent good, and cannot but be of fish in their seasons, scote, cod, turbot, and herring we have tasted of, abundance of mussels, the greatest and best that we ever saw, crabs and lobsters in their time infinite. It is in fashion like a cycle or fish-hook. Monday, the 13th day, we went to land, manned with the master of the ship and 3 or 4 of the sailors. We marched along the coast in the woods, some 7 or 8 mile, but saw not an Indian, nor an Indian house, only we found where formerly had been some inhabitants, and where they had planted their corn. We found not any navigable river, but 4 or 5 small running brooks of very sweet fresh water, that all run into the sea. The land, for the crust of the earth, is a spit's depth, excellent black mould and fat in some places, 2 or 3 great oaks, but not very thick, pines, walnuts, beech, ash, birch, hazel, holly, asp, sassafras in abundance, and vines everywhere, cherry trees, plum trees, and many other which we know not. Many kinds of herbs we found here in winter, as strawberry leaves innumerable, sorrel, yarrow, carawel, brooklime, liverwort, watercress, great store of leeks and onions, and an excellent strong kind of flax and hemp. Here is sand, gravel, and excellent clay, no better in the world, excellent for pots, and will wash like soap, and great store of stone, though somewhat soft, and the best water that ever we drunk, and the brooks now begin to be full of fish. That night, many being weary with marching, we went aboard again. End of section 14. Section 15 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A Relation, Part 9. The next morning, being Tuesday, the 19th of December, we went again to discover further. Some went on land, and some in the shallop. The land we found as the former day we did, and we found a creek, and went up 3 English miles, a very pleasant river, at full sea. A bark of 30 ton may go up, but at low water scarce our shallop could pass. This place we had a great liking to plant in, but that it was so far from our fishing, our principal profit, and so encompassed with woods, that we should be in much danger of the savages, and our number being so little, and so much ground to clear, so as we thought good to quit and clear that place, till we were of more strength, some of us having a good mind for safety to plant in the greater isle. We crossed the bay, which there is 5 or 6 miles over, and found the isle about 1.5 miles, or 2 miles about, all wooded, and no fresh water, but 2 or 3 pits that we doubted of fresh water in the summer, and so full of wood, as we could hardly clear so much as to serve us for corn. Besides, we judged it cold for our corn, and some part very rocky, yet divers thought of it as a place defensible and of great security. That night we returned again a shipboard, with resolution the next morning to settle on some of those places. So in the morning after we had called on God for direction, we came to this resolution to go presently ashore again, and to take a better view of 2 places which we thought most fitting for us, so we could not now take time for further search or consideration, our victuals being much spent, especially our beer, and it being now the 19th of December. After our landing and viewing of the places, so well as we could, we came to a conclusion, by most voices, to set on the mainland, on the first place, on an high ground, where there is a great deal of land cleared, and hath been planted with corn 3 or 4 years ago, and there is a very sweet brook runs under the hillside, and many delicate springs of as good water as can be drunk, and where we may harbour our shallops and boats exceeding well, and in this brook much good fish in their seasons. On the further side of the river also much corn ground cleared. In one field is a great hill, on which we point to make a platform, and plant our ordnance, which will command all round about. From thence we may see into the bay, and far into the sea, and we may see thence Cape Cod. Our greatest labour will be fetching of our wood, which is 1/4 of an English mile, but there is enough so far off. What people inhabit here we yet know not, for as yet we have seen none. So there we made our rendezvous, and a place for some of our people, about 20, resolving in the morning to come all ashore and to build houses. But the next morning being Thursday, the 21st of December, it was stormy and wet, that we could not go ashore, and those that remained there all night could do nothing, but were wet, not having daylight enough to make them a sufficient court of guard to keep them dry. All that night it blew and rained extremely. It was so tempestuous that the shallop could not go on land so soon as was meet, for they had no victuals on land. About 11 o'clock the shallop went off with much ado with provision, but could not return, it blew so strong, and was such foul weather that we were forced to let fall our anchor, and ride with 3 anchors an head. Friday the 22nd the storm still continued, that we could not get a land, nor they come to us aboard. This morning Goodwife Alderton was delivered of a son, but dead born. Saturday the 23rd, so many of us as could went on shore, felled and carried timber to provide themselves stuff for building. Sunday the 24th our people on shore heard a cry of some savages, as they thought, which caused an alarm, and to stand on their guard expecting an assault, but all was quiet. Monday the 25th day we went on shore, some to fell timber, some to saw, some to rive, and some to carry, so no man rested all that day, but towards night some, as they were at work, heard a noise of some Indians, which caused us all to go to our muskets, but we heard no further, so we came aboard again, and left some 20 to keep the court of guard. That night we had a sore storm of wind and rain. Monday the 25th, being Christmas Day, we began to drink water aboard, but at night the master caused us to have some beer, and so on board we had divers times, now and then some beer, but on shore none at all. Tuesday the 26th, it was foul weather, that we could not go ashore. Wednesday the 27th we went to work again. Thursday the 28th of December, so many as could went to work on the hill, where we purposed to build our platform for our ordnance, and which doth command all the plain and the bay, and from whence we may see far into the sea, and might be easier impaled, having 2 rows of houses and a fair street. So in the afternoon we went to measure out the grounds, and first we took notice how many families they were, willing all single men that had no wives to join with some family as they thought fit, that so we might build fewer houses, which was done, and we reduced them to 19 families. To greater families we allotted larger plots, to every person 1/2 pole in breadth, and 3 in length. And so lots were cast where every man should lie, which was done and staked out. We thought this proportion was large enough at the first for houses and gardens to impale them round, considering the weakness of our people, many of them growing ill with colds, for our former discoveries in frost and storms, and the wading at Cape Cod, had brought much weakness amongst us, which increased so every day more and more, and after was the cause of many of their deaths. Friday and Saturday we fitted ourselves for our labour, but our people on shore were much troubled and discouraged with rain and wet that day, being very stormy and cold. We saw great smokes of fire made by the Indians about 6 or 7 miles from us, as we conjectured. Monday, the 1st of January, we went betimes to work. We were much hindered in lying so far off from the land, and fain to go as the tide served, that we lost much time, for our ship drew so much water that she lay 1.5 miles off, though a ship of 70 or 80 ton at high water may come to the shore. Wednesday, the 3rd of January, some of our people being abroad to get and gather thatch, they saw great fires of the Indians, and were at their cornfields, yet saw none of the savages, nor had seen any of them since we came to this bay. Thursday, the 4th of January, Captain Miles Standish, with 4 or 5 more, went to see if they could meet with any of the savages in that place where the fires were made. They went to some of their houses, but not lately inhabited, yet could they not meet with any. As they came home, they shot at an eagle and killed her, which was excellent meat. It was hardly to be discerned from mutton. End of section 15. Section 16 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A Relation, Part 10. Friday, the 5th of January, one of the sailors found alive upon the shore an herring which the master had to his supper, which put us in hope of fish, but as yet we had got but 1 cod. We wanted small hooks. Saturday, the 6th of January, Master Martin was very sick, and to our judgment no hope of life, so Master Carver was sent for to come aboard to speak with him about his accounts, who came the next morning. Monday, the 8th day of January, was a very fair day, and we went betimes to work. Master Jones sent the shallop, as he had formerly done, to sea, where fish could be got. They had a great storm at sea, and were in some danger. At night they returned with 3 great seals, and an excellent good cod, which did assure us that we should have plenty of fish shortly. This day Francis Billington, having the week before seen from the top of a tree, on an high hill, a great sea, as he thought, went with one of the master's mates to see it. They went 3 miles, and then came to a great water, divided into 2 lakes, the bigger of them 5 or 6 miles in circuit, and in it an isle of a cable-length square, the other 3 miles in compass. In their estimation they are fine fresh water, full of fish and fowl. A brook issues from it. It will be an excellent help for us in time. They found 7 or 8 Indian houses, but not lately inhabited. When they saw the houses they were in some fear, for they were but 2 persons and 1 piece. Tuesday, the 9th of January, was a reasonable fair day, and we went to labour that day in the building of our town, in 2 rows of houses, for more safety. We divided by lot the plot of ground whereon to build our town. After the proportion formerly allotted, we agreed that every man should build his own house, thinking by that course men would make more haste than working in common. The common house in which for the first we made our rendezvous, being near finished, wanted only covering, it being about 20 foot square. Some should make mortar, and some gather thatch, so that in 4 days half of it was thatched. Frost and foul weather hindered us much. This time of the year seldom could we work half the week. Thursday the 11th, William Bradford, being at work, for it was a fair day, was vehemently taken with a grief and pain, and so shot to his hucklebone. It was doubted that he could have instantly died. He got cold in the former discoveries, especially the last, and felt some pain in his ankles betimes. But he grew a little better towards night, and in time, through God's mercy and the use of means, recovered. Friday the 12th we went to work, but about noon it began to rain, that it forced us to give over work. This day 2 of our people put us in great sorrow and care. There was 4 sent to gather and cut thatch in the morning, and 2 of them, John Goodman and Peter Brown, having cut thatch all the forenoon, went to a further place and willed the other 2 to bind up that which was cut, and to follow them. So they did, being about 1.5 miles from our plantation, but when the 2 came after, they could not find them, nor hear anything of them at all, though they hallooed and shouted as loud as they could. So they returned to the company and told them of it, whereupon Master Lever and 3 or 4 more went to seek them, but could hear nothing of them. So they returning sent more, but that night they could hear nothing at all of them. The next day they armed 10 or 12 men out, verily thinking the Indians had surprised them. They went seeking 7 or 8 miles, but could neither see nor hear anything at all, so they returned with much discomfort to us all. These 2 that were missed at dinner time took their meat in their hands, and would go walk and refresh themselves. So going a little off, they find a great lake of water, and having a great mastiff bitch with them, and a spaniel, by the waterside they found a great deer. The dogs chased him, and they followed so far as they lost themselves, and could not find the way back. They wandered all the afternoon, being wet. At night it did freeze and snow. They were slenderly apparelled, and had no weapons, but each one his cycle, nor any victuals. They ranged up and down, and could find none of the savages' habitations. When it drew to night, they were much perplexed, for they could find neither harbour nor meat, but in frost and snow were forced to make the earth their bed, and the element their covering. And another thing did very much terrify them. They heard, as they thought, 2 lions roaring exceedingly for a long time together, and a third, that they thought was very near them. So, not knowing what to do, they resolved to climb up into a tree as their safest refuge, though that would prove an intolerable cold lodging. So they stood at the tree's root, that when the lions came they might take their opportunity of climbing up. The bitch they were fain to hold by the neck, for she would have been gone to the lion, but it pleased God so to dispose that the wild beasts came not. So they walked up and down under the tree all night. It was an extreme cold night. So soon as it was light, they travelled again, passing by many lakes and brooks and woods, and in one place where the savages had burnt the space of 5 miles in length, which is a fine champion country, and even. In the afternoon it pleased God, from an high hill they discovered the 2 isles in the bay, and so that night got to the plantation, being ready to faint with travel and want of victuals, and almost famished with cold. John Goodman was fain to have his shoes cut off his feet, they were so swelled with cold, and it was a long while after ere he was able to go. Those on the shore were much comforted at their return, but they on shipboard were grieved as deeming them lost. But the next day, being the 14th of January, in the morning about 6 of the clock, the wind being very great, they on shipboard spied their great new rendezvous on fire, which was to them a new discomfort, fearing, because of the supposed loss of the men, that the savages had fired them. Neither could they presently go to them for want of water, but after 3/4 of an hour they went, as they had purposed the day before to keep the Sabbath on shore, because now there was a great number of people. At their landing they heard good tidings of the return of the 2 men, and that the house was fired occasionally by a spark that flew into the thatch, which instantly burnt it all up. But the roof stood and little hurt. The most loss was Master Carver's and William Bradford's, who then lay sick in bed, and if they had not risen with good speed had been blown up with powder. But through God's mercy they had no harm. The house was as full of beds as they could lie one by another, and their muskets charged, but blessed be God, there was no harm done. Monday, the 15th day, it rained much all day, that they on shipboard could not go on shore, nor they on shore do any labour, but were all wet. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday were all very fair sunshiny days, as if it had been in April, and our people, so many as were in health, wrought cheerfully. The 19th day we resolved to make a shed to put our common provision in, of which some were already set on shore, but at noon it rained, that we could not work. This day in the evening John Goodman went abroad to use his lame feet, that were pitifully ill with the cold he had got. Having a little spaniel with him, a little way from the plantation, 2 great wolves ran after the dog. The dog ran to him, and betwixt his legs for succour, he had nothing in his hand, but took up a stick, and threw at one of them, and hit him. and they presently ran both away, but came again. He got a pale board in his hand, and they sat both on their tails, grinning at him a good while, and went their way and left him. Sunday the 21st we kept our meeting on land. Monday the 22nd was a fair day. We wrought on our houses, and in the afternoon carried up our hogsheads of mead to our common storehouse. The rest of the week we followed our business likewise. End of section 16. Section 17 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A Relation, Part 11. Monday the 29th, in the morning, cold frost and sleet, but after reasonable fare. Both the longboat and the shallop brought our common goods on shore. Tuesday and Wednesday, 30th and 31st of January, cold frosty weather and sleet, that we could not work. In the morning the master and others saw 2 savages that had been on the island near our ship. What they came for we could not tell. They were going so far back again, before they were descried, that we could not speak with them. Sunday, the 4th of February, was very wet and rainy, with the greatest gusts of wind that ever we had since we came forth, that though we rid in a very good harbour, yet we were in danger because our ship was light, the goods taken out, and she unballasted, and it caused much daubing of our houses to fall down. Friday, the 9th, still the cold weather continued, that we could do little work. That afternoon our little house for our sick people was set on fire by a spark that kindled in the roof, but no great harm was done. That evening the master, going ashore, killed 5 geese, which he friendly distributed among the sick people. He found also a good deer killed. The savages had cut off the horns, and a wolf was eating of him. How he came there we could not conceive. Friday, the 16th day, was a fair day, but the northerly wind continued, which continued the frost. This day afternoon, one of our people being a-fowling, and having taken a stand by a creek-side in the reeds, about 1.5 miles from our plantation, there came by him 12 Indians, marching towards our plantation, and in the woods he heard the noise of many more. He lay close till they were past. Then, with what speed he could, he went home and gave the alarm, so the people abroad in the woods returned and armed themselves, but saw none of them. Only toward the evening they made a great fire about the place where they were first discovered. Captain Miles Standish and Francis Cook, being at work in the woods, coming home, left their tools behind them, but before they returned their tools were taken away by the savages. This coming of the savages gave us occasion to keep more strict watch, and to make our pieces and furniture ready, which by the moisture and rain were out of temper. Saturday, the 17th day, in the morning, we called a meeting for the establishing of military orders amongst ourselves, and we chose Miles Standish our captain, and gave him authority of command in affairs, and as we were in consultation hereabouts, 2 savages presented themselves upon the top of an hill, over against our plantation, about 1/4 mile and less, and made signs unto us to come unto them. We likewise made signs unto them to come to us, whereupon we armed ourselves and stood ready, and sent 2 over the brook towards them, to wit, Captain Standish and Stephen Hopkins, who went towards them. Only one of them had a musket, which they laid down on the ground in their sight, in sign of peace, and to parley with them, but the savages would not tarry their coming. A noise of great many more was heard behind the hill, but no more came in sight. This caused us to plant our great ordinances in places most convenient. Wednesday, the 21st of February, the master came on shore with many of his sailors, and brought with him one of the great pieces, called a minion, and helped us to draw it up the hill, with another piece that lay on shore, and mounted them, and a faller, and 2 bases. He brought with him a very fat goose to eat with us, and we had a fat crane and a mallard, and a dried neat's tongue, and so we were kindly and friendly together. Saturday, the 3rd of March, the wind was south, the morning misty, but towards noon warm and fair weather. The birds sang in the woods most pleasantly. At 1 of the clock it thundered, which was the first we heard in that country. It was strong and great claps, but short. But after an hour it rained very sadly till midnight. Wednesday the 7th of March, the wind was full east, cold but fair. That day Master Carver, with 5 other, went to the great ponds, which seemed to be excellent fishing places. All the way they went, they found it exceedingly beaten and haunted with deer, but they saw none. Amongst other fowl, they saw one, a milk-white fowl with a very black head. This day some garden seeds were sown. Friday the 16th, a fair warm day towards. This morning we determined to conclude of the military orders, which we had begun to consider of before, but were interrupted by the savages, as we mentioned formerly, and whilst we were busied hereabout, we were interrupted again, for there presented himself a savage, which caused an alarm. He very boldly came alone, and along the houses straight to the rendezvous, where we intercepted him, not suffering him to go in, as undoubtedly he would, out of his boldness. He saluted us in English, and bade us welcome, for he had learnt some broken English amongst the Englishmen that came to fish at Monhegan, and knew by name the most of the captains, commanders, and masters that usually come. He was a man free in speech, so far as he could express his mind, and of a seemly carriage. We questioned him of many things. He was the first savage we could meet withal. He said he was not of these parts, but of Mourtigan, and one of the sagamores or lords thereof, and had been 8 months in these parts, it lying hence a day's sail with a great wind, and 5 days by land. He discoursed of the whole country, and of every province, and of their sagamores, and their number of men and strength. The wind beginning to rise a little, we cast a horseman's coat about him, for he was stark naked, only a leather about his waist, with a fringe about a span long or little more. He had a bow and 2 arrows, the one headed, the other unheaded. He was a tall, straight man, the hair of his black head long behind, only short before, none on his face at all. He asked some beer, but we gave him strong water and biscuit and butter and cheese and pudding, and had been acquainted with such amongst the English. He told us the place where we now live is called Packanokik, and that about 4 years ago all the inhabitants died of an extraordinary plague, and there is neither man, woman, nor child remaining, as indeed we have found none, so as there is none to hinder our possession, or to lay claim unto it. All the afternoon we spent in communication with him. We would gladly have been rid of him at night, but he was not willing to go this night. Then we thought to carry him on shipboard, wherewith he was well content, and went into the shallop, but the wind was high and water scant, that it could not return back. We lodged him that night at Stephen Hopkins's house, and watched him. The next day he went away back to the Massachusets, from whence he said he came, who are our next bordering neighbours. They are 60 strong, as he saith. The Navsets are as near south-east of them, and are 100 strong, and those were they of whom our people were encountered, as we before related. They are much incensed and provoked against the English, and about 8 months ago slew 3 Englishmen, and 2 more hardly escaped by flight to Mohegan. They were Sir Ferdinando Gorge, his men, as this savage told us, as he did likewise of the huggery, that is, fight, that our discoverers had with the Namaschets, and of our tools that were taken out of the woods, which we willed him should be brought again, otherwise we would right ourselves. These people are ill affected towards the English by reason of one Hunt, a master of a ship, who, deceiving the people, and got them under colour of trucking with them, 20 out of this very place where we inhabit, and 7 men from the Namaschets, and carried them away and sold them for slaves, like a wretched man, for £20 a man, that cares not what mischief he doth for his profit. End of section 17. Section 18 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A Relation, Part 12. Saturday in the morning we dismissed the savage and gave him a knife, a bracelet, and a ring. He promised within a night or 2 to come again, and to bring with him some of the Massachusets, our neighbours, with such beavers' skins as they had to truck with us. Saturday and Sunday, reasonable fair days. On this day came again the savage, and brought with him 5 other tall proper men. They had every man a deer's skin on him, and the principal of them had a wildcat's skin, or such like, on the one arm. They had, most of them, long hosen up to their groins, close made, and above their groins to their waist another leather. They were altogether like the Irish trousers. They are of complexion like our English gypsies, no hair or very little on their faces, on their heads long hair to their shoulders, only cut before some trussed up before with a feather, broadwise like a fan, another a fox-tail hanging out. These left, according to our charge given him before, their bows and arrows 1/4 of a mile from our town. We gave them entertainment as we thought was fitting them. They did eat liberally of our English victuals. They made semblance unto us of friendship and amity. They sung and danced after their manner, like antics. They brought with them, in a thing like a bow-case, which the principal of them had about his waist, a little of their corn pounded to powder, which, put to a little water, they eat. They had a little tobacco in a bag, but none of them drunk. But when he listed, some of them had their faces painted black, from the forehead to the chin, 4 or 5 fingers broad. Others after other fashions, as they liked. They brought 3 or 4 skins, but we would not truck with them at all that day, but wished them to bring more, and we would truck for all, which they promised within a night or 2, and would leave these behind them, though we were not willing they should, and they brought us all our tools again, which were taken in the woods, in our men's absence. So, because of the day, we dismissed them so soon as we could. But Samoset, our first acquaintance, either was sick or feigned himself so, and would not go with them, and stayed with us till Wednesday morning. Then we sent him to them, to know the reason they came not according to their words, and we gave him an hat, a pair of stockings and shoes, a shirt, and a piece of cloth to tie about his waist. The Sabbath day, when we sent them from us, we gave every one of them some trifles, especially the principal of them. We carried them, along with our arms, to the place where they left their bows and arrows, whereat they were amazed, and 2 of them began to slink away, but that the other called them. When they took their arrows, we bade them farewell, and they were glad, and so with many thanks given us they departed, with promise they would come again. Monday and Tuesday proved fair days. We digged our grounds and sowed our garden seeds. Wednesday, a fine warm day, we sent away Somerset. That day we had again a meeting to conclude of laws and orders for ourselves, and to confirm those military orders that were formerly propounded, and twice broken off by the savages coming. But so we were again the 3rd time, for after we had been an hour together, on the top of the hill over against us, 2 or 3 savages presented themselves that made semblance of daring us, as we thought. So Captain Standish with another, with their muskets, went over to them, with 2 of the master's mates that followed them without arms, having 2 muskets with them. They whetted and rubbed their arrows and strings, and made show of defiance, but when our men drew near them, they ran away. Thus we were again interrupted by them. This day, with much ado, we got our carpenter, that had been long sick of the scurvy, to fit our shallop, to fetch all from aboard. Thursday, the 22nd of March, was a very fair warm day. About noon we met again, about our public business, but we had scarce been an hour together, but Somerset came again, and Squanto, the only native of Packanokik, where we now inhabit, who was one of the 20 captives that by hunt were carried away, and had been in England, and dwelt in Cornhill with Master John Slaney, a merchant, and could speak a little English, with 3 others, and they brought with them some few skins to truck, and some red herrings newly taken and dried, but not salted, and signified unto us that their great Sagam or Massachusets was hard by, with Quatequina his brother, and all their men. They could not well express in English what they would, but after an hour the king came to the top of an hill, over against us, and had in his train 60 men, that we could well behold them, and they us. We were not willing to send our governor to them, and they unwilling to come to us, so Squanto went again unto him, who brought word that we should send one to parley with him, which we did, which was Edward Winslow, to know his mind, and to signify the mind and will of our governor, which was to have trading and peace with them. We sent to the king a pair of knives and a copper chain with a jewel at it. To Quatequina we sent likewise a knife and a jewel to hang in his ear, and withal a pot of strong water, a good quantity of biscuit, and some butter, which were all willingly accepted. Our messenger made a speech unto him, that King James saluted him with words of love and peace, and did accept of him as his friend and ally, and that our governor desired to see him and to truck with him, and to confirm a peace with him as his next neighbour. He liked well of the speech, and heard it attentively, though the interpreters did not well express it. After he had eaten and drunk himself, and given the rest to his company, he looked upon our messenger's sword and armour, which he had on, with intimation of his desire to buy it, but on the other side our messenger showed his unwillingness to part with it. In the end he left him in the custody of Quadaquina, his brother, and came over the brook, and some 20 men following him, leaving all their bows and arrows behind them. We kept 6 or 7 as hostages for our messenger. Captain Standish and Master Williamson met the king at the brook, with 6 musketeers. They saluted him, and he them. So one going over, the one on the other side, and the other on the other, conducted him to an house then in building, where we placed a green rug and 3 or 4 cushions. Then instantly came our governor with drum and trumpet after him, and some few musketeers. After salutations, our governor kissing his hand, the king kissed him, and so they sat down. The governor called for some strong water, and drunk to him, and he drunk a great draught, that made him sweat all the while after. He called for a little fresh meat, which the king did eat willingly, and did give his followers. Then they treated of peace, which was, 1, that neither he nor any of his should injure or do hurt to any of our people. 2, and if any of his did hurt to any of ours, he should send the offender, that we might punish him. 3, that if any of our tools were taken away when our people were at work, he should cause them to be restored, and if ours did any harm to any of his, we would do the like to them. 4, if any did unjustly war against him, we would aid him. If any did war against us, he should aid us. 5, he should send to his neighbour confederates, to certify them of this, that they might not wrong us, but might be likewise comprised in the conditions of peace. 6, that when their men came to us, they should leave their bows and arrows behind them, as we should do our pieces when we came to them. Lastly, that doing thus, King James would esteem of him as his friend and ally, all which the king seemed to like well, and it was applauded of his followers. All the while he sat by the governor, he trembled for fear. In his person he is a very lusty man in his best years, an able body, grave of countenance, and spare of speech. In his attire little or nothing differing from the rest of his followers, only in a great chain of white bone beads about his neck, and at it behind his neck hangs a little bag of tobacco, which he drank and gave us to drink. His face was painted with a sad red like murrey, and oiled both head and face, that he looked greasily. All his followers likewise were in their faces, in part or in whole, painted, some black, some red, some yellow, and some white, some with crosses and other antic works. Some had skins on them, and some naked, all strong, tall, all men in appearance. So, after all was done, the governor conducted him to the brook, and there they embraced each other, and he departed. We, diligently keeping our hostages, we expected our messengers coming, but anon word was brought us that Quadaquina was coming, and our messenger was stayed till his return, who presently came, and a troop with him. So likewise we entertained him, and conveyed him to the place prepared. He was very fearful of our pieces, and made signs of dislike, that they should be carried away, whereupon commandment was given they should be laid away. He was a very proper, tall young man, of a very modest and seemly countenance, and he did kindly like of our entertainment. So we conveyed him likewise, as we did the king, but divers of their people stayed still. When he was returned, then they dismissed our messenger. 2 of his people would have stayed all night, but we would not suffer it. One thing I forgot. The king had in his bosom hanging in a string a great long knife. He marvelled much at our trumpet, and some of his men would sound it as well as they could, Somerset and Squanto. They stayed all night with us, and the king and all his men lay all night in the woods, not above half an English mile from us, and all their wives and women with them. They said that within 8 or 9 days they would come and set corn on the other side of the brook, and dwell there all summer, which is hard by us. That night we kept good watch, but there was no appearance of danger. The next morning divers of their people came over to us, hoping to get some victuals, as we imagined. Some of them told us the king would have some of us come see him. Captain Standish and Isaac Alderton went venturously, who were welcomed of him after their manner. He gave them 3 or 4 ground nuts and some tobacco. We cannot yet conceive, but that he is willing to have peace with us, for they have seen our people sometimes alone, 2 or 3 in the woods at work and fowling, whenas they offered them no harm as they might easily have done, and especially because he hath a potent adversary, the narrow Whiggenses, that are at war with him, against whom he thinks we may be some strength to him, for our pieces are terrible unto them. This morning they stayed till 10 or 11 of the clock, and our governor bid them send the king's kettle and filled it full of peas, which pleased them well, and so they went their way. Friday was a very fair day. Somerset and Squanto still remained with us. Squanto went at noon to fish for eels. At night he came home with as many as he could well lift in one hand, which our people were glad of. They were fat and sweet. He trod them out with his feet, and so caught them with his hands without any other instrument. This day we proceeded on with our common business, from which we had been so often hindered by the savages coming, and concluded both of military orders and of some laws and orders, as we thought behooveful for our present estate and condition, and did likewise choose our governor for this year, which was Master John Carver, a man well approved amongst us. End of section 18.
Section 19 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A journey to Packanokik, the habitation of the great king Massachusets, and also our message, the answer, and entertainment we had of him. It seemed good to the company for many considerations to send some amongst them to Massachusets, the greatest commander amongst the savages bordering about us, partially to know where to find them if occasion served, as also to see their strength, discover the country, prevent abuses in their disorderly coming unto us, make satisfaction for some conceived injuries to be done on our parts, and to continue the league of peace and friendship between them and us. For these and the like ends, it pleased the governor to make choice of Stephen Hopkins and Edward Winslow, to go unto him, and having a fit of opportunity by reason of a savage called Squantum, that could speak English, coming unto us, with all expedition provided a horseman's coat of red cotton, and laced with a slight lace for a present, that both they and their message might be the more acceptable amongst them. The message was as followeth, that so as much as his subjects came often and without fear upon all occasions amongst us, so we were now come unto him, and in witness of the love and goodwill the English bear unto him, the governor hath sent him a coat, desiring that the peace and enmity that was between them and us might be continued, not that we feared them, but because we intended not to injure any, desiring to live peaceably. And as with all men, so especially with them our nearest neighbors. But whereas his people came very often and very many together unto us, bringing for the most part their wives and children with them, they were welcome. Yet we, being but strangers as yet at Pawtucket, alias New Plymouth, and not knowing how our corn might prosper, we could no longer give them such entertainment as we had done, and as we desired still to do. Yet if he would be pleased to come himself, or any special friends of his desired to see us, coming from him, they should be welcome, and to the end we might know them from others. Our governor had sent him a copper chain, desiring if any messenger should come from him to us, we might know him by bringing it with him, and hearken and give credit to his message accordingly, also requesting him that such as have skins should bring them to us, and that he would hinder the multitude from oppressing us with them. And whereas at our first arrival at Potomac, called by us Cape Cod, we found their corn buried in the ground, and finding no inhabitants but some graves of dead new buried, took the corn, resolving, if ever we could hear of any that had right thereunto, to make satisfaction to the full for it. Yet since we understand the owners thereof were fled for fear of us, our desire was either to pay them with the like quantity of corn, English meal, or any other commodities we had the pleasure of them withal, requesting him that some one of his men might signify so much unto them, and we would content him for his pains. And last of all, our governor requested one favour of him, which was, that he would exchange some of their corn for feed with us, that we might make trial which best agreed with the soil where we live. With these presents and message, we set forward the 10th June, about 9 o'clock in the morning, our guide resolving that night to rest at Namaschet, a town under Massachusets, and conceived by us to be very near, because the inhabitants flocked so thick upon every slight occasion amongst us. But we found it to be some 15 English miles. On the way we found some 10 or 12 men, women, and children, which had pestered us till we were weary of them, perceiving that, as the manner of them all is, where victuals is easiest to be got, there they live, especially in the summer, by reason whereof, our bay affording many lobsters, they resort every spring tide thither, and now returned with us to Namaschet. Thither we came about 3 o'clock afternoon, the inhabitants entertaining us with joy in the best manner they could, giving us a kind of bread called by them maisium, and the spawn of shads, which then they got in abundance, insomuch as they gave us spoons to eat them. With these they boiled musty acorns, but of the shads we ate heartily. After this, they desired one of our men to shoot at a crow, complaining what damage they sustained in their corn by them, who shooting some 80 off, and killing, they much admired it, as other shots on other occasions. After this, Tisquantum told us we should hardly in one day reach Packanokik, moving us to go some 8 miles further, where we should find more store and better victuals than there. Being willing to hasten our journey, we went, and came thither at sun-setting, where we found many of the Namaschets, they so calling the men of Namaschet, fishing upon a weir which they had made on a river which belonged to them, where they caught abundance of bass. These welcomed us also, gave us of their fish, and we them of our victuals, not doubting but we should have enough where'er we came. There we lodged in the open fields, for houses they had none, though they spent the most of the summer there. The head of this river is reported to be not far from the place of our abode. Upon it are, and have been many towns, it being a good length. The ground is very good on both sides, it being for the most part cleared. Thousands of men have lived there, which died in a great plague not long since. And pity it was and is to see so many goodly fields, and so well seated without men to dress and manure the same. Upon this river dwelleth Massachusets. It cometh into the sea at the Narragansett Bay, where the Frenchmen so much use. A ship may go many miles up it, as the savages report, and a shallop to the head of it, but so far as we saw, we are sure a shallop may. But to return to our journey. The next morning we brake our fasts, took our leave, and departed, being then accompanied with some 6 savages, having gone about 6 miles by the river side, at a known shoal place, it being low water. They spake to us to put off our breeches, for we must wade through. Here let me not forget the valor and courage of some of the savages on the opposite side of the river, for there were remaining alive only 2 men, both aged, especially the one being about 80. These 2, espying a company of men entering the river, ran very swiftly and low in the grass to meet us at the bank, where with shrill voices and great courage standing, charged upon us with their bows. They demanded what we were, supposing us to be enemies, and thinking to take advantage on us in the water. But seeing we were friends, they welcomed us with such food as they had, and we bestowed a small bracelet of beads on them. Thus far we are sure the tide ebbs and flows. Having here again refreshed ourselves, we proceeded in our journey, the weather being very hot for travel, yet the country so well watered that a man could scarce be dry, but he should have a spring at hand to cool his thirst, besides small rivers in abundance. But the savages will not willingly drink but at a spring head. When we came to any small brooks where no bridge was, 2 of them desired to carry us through of their own accords. Also, fearing we were or would be weary, offered to carry our pieces also. If we would lay off any of our clothes, we should have them carried. And as the one of them had found more special kindness from one of the messengers, and the other savage from the other, so they showed their thankfulness accordingly, in affording us all help and furtherance in the journey. As we passed along, we observed that there were a few places by the river, but had been inhabited, by reason whereof much ground was clear, save of weeds which grew higher than our heads. There is much good timber, both oak, walnut tree, fir, beech, and exceeding great chestnut trees. The country in respect of the lying of it is both champany and hilly, like many places in England. In some places it's very rocky, both above ground and in it. And though the country be wild and overgrown with woods, yet the trees stand not thick, but a man may well ride a horse amongst them. Passing on length at one of the company, an Indian espied a man, and told the rest of it. We asked them if they feared any. They told us that if they were Narragansett men, they would not trust them. Whereat we called for our pieces and bid them not to fear. For though they were 20, we 2 alone would not care for them. But they, hailing him, he proved a friend, and had only 2 women with him. Their baskets were empty, but they fetched water in their bottles, so that we drank with them and departed. After we met another man with other 2 women, which had been at rendezvous by the salt water, and their baskets were full of roasted crab, fishes, and other dried shellfish, of which they gave us, and we ate and drank with them, and gave each of the women a string of beads, and departed. After we came to a town of Massachusets, where we eat oysters and other fish. From thence we went to Packanokik, but Massachusetts was not at home. There we stayed, he being sent for. When news was brought of his coming, our guide to Squantum requested that at our meeting we would charge our pieces, but one of us going about to charge his piece, the women and children, through fear to see him take up his piece, ran away, and could not be pacified till he laid it down again, who afterward were better informed by interpreter. Massachusetts being come, we discharged our pieces and saluted him, who after their manner kindly welcomed us, and took us into his house and set us down by him, where having delivered our foresaid message and presents, and having put the coat on his back and the chain about his neck, he was not a little proud to behold himself, and his men also to see their king so bravely attired. For answer to our message, he told us we were welcome, and he would gladly continue that peace and friendship which was between him and us, and for his men they should no more pester us as they had done. Also that he would send to Plymouth and would help us with corn for feed, according to our requests. This being done, his men gathered near to him, to whom he turned himself, and made a great speech, they sometimes interposing, and as it were confirming and applauding him in that he said. The meaning whereof was, as far as we could learn, thus: Was not he Massachusets, commander of the country about them? Was it not such a town, he and the people of it? And should they not bring their skins unto us? To which they answered, they were his, and would be at peace with us, and bring their skins to us. After this manner he named at least 30 places, and their answer was as aforesaid to every one, so that as it was delightful, it was tedious unto us. This being ended, he lighted tobacco for us, and fell to discoursing of England and of the king's majesty, marvelling that he would live without a wife. Also he talked of the Frenchmen, bidding us not to suffer them to come to Narragansett, for it was King James his country, and he also was King James his man. Late it grew, but victuals he offered none, for indeed he had not any, being he came so newly home. So we desired to go to rest. He laid us on the bed with himself and his wife, they at the one end, and we at the other, it being only planks laid a foot from the ground, and a thin mat upon them. 2 more of his chief men, for want of room, pressed by and upon us, so that we were worse weary of our lodging than of our journey. The next day, being Thursday, many of their sackmists, or petty governors, came to see us, and many of their men also. There they went to their manner of games for skins and knives. There we challenged them to shoot with them for skins, but they dared not, only they desired to see one of us shoot at a mark, who shooting with hail shot, they wondered to see the marks so full of holes. About 1 o'clock, Massachusets brought 2 fishes that he had shot. They were like bream, but 3 times so big, and better meat. These being boiled, there were at least 40 looked for a share in them. The most eat of them. This meal only we had in 2 nights and a day, and had not one of us brought a partridge, we had taken our journey fasting. Very importunate he was to have had us stay with them longer, but we desired to keep the Sabbath at home, and feared we should either be light-headed for want of sleep, for what with bad lodgings, the savages' barbarous singing, for they used to sing themselves asleep, lice and fleas within doors, and mosquitoes without. We could hardly sleep all the time of our being there, we much fearing that if we should stay any longer, we should not be able to recover home for want of strength. So that on Friday morning, before sunrising, we took our leave and departed Massachusets, being both grieved and ashamed that he could no better entertain us, and retaining to Squantum to fend from place to place to procure truck for us, and appointing another called Tochamahaman in his place, whom we had found faithful before and after upon all occasions. At this town of Massachusets, where we before eat, we were again refreshed with a little fish, and brought about a handful of meal of their parched corn, which was very precious at the time of the year, and a small string of dried shellfish as big as oysters. The latter we gave to the 6 savages that accompanied us, keeping the meal for ourselves. When we drank, we ate each a spoonful of it, with a pipe of tobacco instead of other victuals, and of this also we could not but give them, so long as it lasted. 5 miles they led us to a house out of the way, in hope of victuals, but we found nobody there, and so were but worse able to return home. That night we reached to the wire where we lay before, but the Namaschets were returned, so that we had no hope of anything there. One of the savages had shot a shad in the water, and a small squirrel as big as a rat called a nexus. The one half of either he gave us, and after went to the wire to fish. From hence we wrote to Plymouth, and sent Tokamahaman before to Namaschet, willing him from thence to send another, that he might meet us with food at Namaschet. 2 men now only remained with us, and it pleased God to give them good store of fish, so that we were well refreshed. After supper we went to rest, and they fishing again. More they got, and fell to eating afresh, and retained sufficient ready roast for all our breakfasts. About 2 o'clock in the morning arose a great storm of wind, rain, lightning, and thunder, in such violent manner that we could not keep in our fire. And had the savages not roasted fish when we were asleep, we had set forward fasting, for the rain still continued with great violence even the whole day through till we came within 2 miles of home. Being wet and weary, at length we came to Namaschet. There we refreshed ourselves, giving gifts to all such as showed us any kindness. Amongst others, one of the 6 that came with us from Packanokik, having before this on the way unkindly forsaken us, marveled we gave him nothing, and told us what he had done for us. We also told him of some difficulties he offered us, whereby he deserved nothing, yet we gave him a small trifle, whereupon he offered us tobacco. But the house being full of people, we told them he stole some by the way, and if it were of that we would not take it, for we would not receive that which was stolen upon any terms. If we did, our God would be angry with us and destroy us. This abashed him, and gave the rest great content, but at our departure he would needs carry him on his back through a river, whom he had formerly in some sort abused. Fain would have had us to lodge there all night, and wondered we would set forth again in such weather. But God be praised, we came safe home that night, though wet, weary, and surbated. End of section 19. Read by CaretakerSaxon, Weaver, March 6, 2025.
Section 20 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A voyage made by 10 of our men to the kingdom of Navset. A voyage made by 10 of our men to the kingdom of Navset to seek a boy that had lost himself in the woods, with such accidents as befell us in that voyage. The 11th of June we set forth, the weather being very fair, but ere we had been long at sea, there arose a storm of wind and rain, with much lightning and thunder, insomuch that a spout arose not far from us. But God be praised, it dured not long, and we put in that night for harbour at a place called Cbteddy, where we had some hope to find the boy. 2 savages were in the boat with us. The one was Tisquantum, our interpreter, the other Tokamahaman, a special friend. It being night before we came in, we anchored in the midst of the bay, where we were dry at a low water. In the morning we espied savages seeking lobsters, and sent our 2 interpreters to speak with them, the channel being between them, where they told them what we were, and for what we were come, willing them not at all to fear us, for we would not hurt them. Their answer was that the boy was well, but he was at Navset. Yet since we were there, they desired us to come ashore and eat with them, which as soon as our boat floated we did, and went 6 ashore, having 4 pledges for them in the boat. They brought us to their sachem, or governor, whom they call Ianau, a man not exceeding 25 years of age, but very personable, gentle, courteous, and fair-conditioned, indeed not like a savage, save for his attire. His entertainment was answerable to his parts, and his cheer plentiful and various. One thing was very grievous unto us at this place. There was an old woman whom we judged to be no less than 100 years old, which came to see us because she never saw English, yet could not behold us without breaking forth into great passion, weeping and crying excessively. We demanded the reason of it. They told us she had 3 sons, who, when Master Hunt was in these parts, went aboard his ship to trade with him, and he carried them captives into Spain, for Tisquantum at that time was carried away also, by which means she was deprived of the comfort of her children in her old age. We told them we were sorry that any Englishman should give them that offence, that Hunt was a bad man, and that all the English that heard of it condemned him for the same. But for us we would not offer them any such injury, though it would gain us all the skins in the country. So we gave her some small trifles which somewhat appeased her. After dinner we took boat for Navset, Eonof and 2 of his men accompanying us. Ere we came to Navset, the day and tide were almost spent, insomuch as we could not go in with our shallop, but the Sachem or governor of Comaquid went ashore and his men with him. We also sent Tisquantum to tell Aspenet, the Sachem of Navset, wherefore we came. The savages here came very thick amongst us, and were earnest with us to bring in our boat, but we neither well could, nor yet desired to do it, because we had left cause to trust them, because they openly had formerly made an assault upon us in the same place, in time of our winter discovery for habitation. And indeed it was no marvel they did so, for howsoever, through snow or otherwise, we saw no houses, yet we were in the midst of them. When our boat was aground, they came very thick, but we stood therein upon our guard, not suffering any to enter except 2, the one being Maramoik, and one of those whose corn we had formerly found. We promised him restitution, and desired him either to come to Packanokik for satisfaction, or else we would bring them so much corn again. He promised to come. We used him very kindly for the present. Some few skins we got there, but not many. After sunset, Aspenet came with a great train, and brought the boy with him, one bearing him through the water. He had not less than 100 with him, the half whereof came to the shallop side, unarmed with him. The other stood aloof with their bows and arrows. There he delivered us the boy, behung with beads, and made peace with us, we bestowing a knife on him, and likewise on another that first entertained the boy, and brought him thither. So they departed from us. Here we understood that the Namaschets had spoiled some of the Massachusets' men, and taken him. This struck some fear in us, because the colony was so weakly guarded, the strength thereof being abroad. But we set forth with resolution to make the best haste home we could, yet the wind being contrary, having scarce any fresh water left, and at least 16 leagues home, we put in again for the shore. There we met again with the Eonow of the Sachem of Comaquid, and the most of his town, both men, women, and children with him. He, being still willing to gratify us, took a runlet, and led our men in the dark a great way for water, but could find none good, yet brought such as there was on his neck with them. In the meantime the women joined hand in hand, singing and dancing before the shallop, the men also showing all the kindness they could. Eonow himself taking a bracelet from about his neck, and hanging it upon one of us. Again we set out, but to small purpose, for we gat but little homeward. Our water also was very brackish, and not to be drunk. The next morning Eonow espied us again, and ran after us. We, being resolved to go to Comaquid again to water, took him into the shallop, whose entertainment was not inferior unto the former. The soil at Navset and here is alike, even and sandy, not so good for corn as where we are. Ships may safely ride in either harbour. In the summer they abound with fish. Being now watered, we put forth again, and by God's providence came safely home that night. End of section 20. Section 21 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A voyage made to the kingdom of Namaschet. A journey to the kingdom of Namaschet in defense of the great king Massachusets against the Namaschets, to revenge the supposed death of our interpreter Tisquantum. At our return from Navset, we found it true that Massachusets was put from his country by the Namaschets. Word also was brought unto us that one Cbteddy, a petty sachem or governor under Massachusets, whom they ever feared to be too conversant with the Namaschets, was at Namaschet, who sought to draw the hearts of Massachusets' subjects from him, speaking also disdainfully of us, storming at the peace between Navset, Cumaquid, and us, and at Tisquantum, the worker of it, also at Tochamahamon, and one Hobamok, 2 Indians or lemes, one of which he would treacherously have murdered a little before, being a special and trusty man of Massachusets. Tochamahamon went to him, but the other 2 would not, yet put their lives in their hands, privately went to see if they could hear of their king, and lodging at Namaschet, were discovered to Cbteddy, who set a guard to beset the house and took Tisquantum, for he had said, if he were dead, the English had lost their tongue. Hobamok, seeing that Tisquantum was taken, and Cbteddy held a knife at his breast, being a strong and stout man, brake from them, and came to New Plymouth, full of fear and sorrow for Tisquantum, whom he thought to be slain. Upon this news the company assembled together, and resolved on the morrow to send 10 men armed to Namaschet and Hobamok for their guide, to revenge the supposed death of Tisquantum on Cbteddy, our bitter enemy, and to retain Nepeof, another sachem or governor, who was of this confederacy, till we heard what was become of our friend Massachusets. On the morrow we set out 10 men armed, who took their journey as aforesaid, but the day proved very wet. When we supposed we were within 3 or 4 miles of Namaschet, we went out of the way and stayed there till night, because we would not be discovered. There we consulted what to do, and thinking best to beset the house at midnight, each was appointed his task by the captain, all men encouraging one another to the utmost of their power. By night our guide lost his way, which much discouraged our men, being we were wet and weary of our arms, but one of our men, having been before at Namaschet, brought us into the way again. Before we came to the town we sat down and ate such as our knapsack afforded. That being done, we threw them aside, and all such things as might hinder us, and so went on and beset the house, according to our last resolution. Those that entered demanded if Cbteddy were not there, but fear had bereft the savages of speech. We charged them not to stir, for if Cbteddy were not there, we would not meddle with them. If he were, we came principally for him, to be avenged on him for the supposed death of Tisquantum and other matters. But howsoever, we would not at all hurt their women or children. Notwithstanding, some of them pressed out at a private door and escaped, but with some wounds. At length, perceiving our principal ends, they told us Cbteddy was returned with all his train, and that Tisquantum was yet living, and in the town, offering some tobacco, other such as they had to eat. In this hurly-burly we discharged 2 pieces at random, which much terrified all the inhabitants, except Tisquantum and Tochamahamon, who, though they knew not our end in coming, yet assured them of our honesty, that we would not hurt them. Those boys that were in the house, seeing our care of women, often cried, Nisquais, that is to say, I am a woman, the women also hanging upon Hobamok, calling him Toam, that is, friend. But to be short, we kept them we had, and made them make a fire, that we might see, to search the house. In the meantime Hobamok gat on the top of the house, and called Tisquantum and Tochamahamon, which came unto us, accompanied with others, some armed and others naked. Those that had bows and arrows, we took them away, promising them again when it was day. The house we took for our better safeguard, but released those we had taken, manifesting whom we came for and wherefore. On the next morning we marched into the midst of the town, and went to the house of Tisquantum to breakfast. Thither came all whose hearts were upright towards us, but all Cbteddy's faction were fled away. There, in the midst of them, we manifested again our intendment, assuring them that, although Cbteddy had now escaped, yet there was no place should secure him and his from us if he continued his threatening us, and provoking others against us, who had kindly entertained him, and never intended evil towards him, till he now so justly deserved it. Moreover, if Massachusets did not return in safety from narrow Navset, or if hereafter he should make any insurrection against him, or offer violence to Tisquantum, Hobomok, or any of the Massachusets' subjects, we would revenge it upon him to the overthrow of him and his. As for those who were wounded, we were sorry for it, though themselves procured it in not staying in the house at our command. Yet if they would return home with us, our surgeon should heal them. At this offer, one man and a woman that were wounded went home with us, Tisquantum and many other known friends accompanying us, and offering all help that might be by carriage of anything we had to ease us, so that by God's good providence we safely returned home the morrow night after we set forth. End of section 21. Section 22 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth by Edward Winslow. A relation of our voyage to the Massachusets and what happened there. It seemed good to the company in general that though the Massachusets had often threatened us, as we were informed, yet we should go amongst them, partly to see the country, partly to make peace with them, and partly to procure their truck. For these ends, the governors chose 10 men fit for the purpose, and sent Tisquantum and 2 other savages to bring us to speech with the people and interpret for us. We set out about midnight, the tide then serving for us, we supposing it to be nearer than it is, thought to be there the next morning betimes, but it proved well near 20 leagues from New Plymouth. We came into the bottom of the bay, but being late, we anchored, and lay in the shallop, not having seen any of the people. The next morning we put in for the shore. There we found many lobsters that had been gathered together by the salvagers, which we made ready under a cliff. The captain set 2 sentinels behind the cliff, to the landward, to secure the shallop, and taking a guide with him, and 4 of our company, went to seek the inhabitants, where they met a woman, coming for her lobsters. They told her of them, and contented her for them. She told them where the people were. Tisquantum went to them, the rest returned, having direction which way to bring the shallop to them. The sachem, or governor, of this place is called Nowat, and though he live in the bottom of the Massachusetts Bay, yet he is under Massachusets. He used us very kindly. He told us he durst not then remain in any settled place, for fear of the Tarantines. Also the Squaw-Sachem, or Massachusetts Queen, was an enemy to him. We told him of divers Sachems that had acknowledged themselves to be King James, his men, and if he also would submit himself, we would be his safeguard from his enemies, which he did, and went along with us to bring us to the Squaw-Sachem. Again we crossed the bay, which is very large, and hath at least 50 islands in it. But the certain number is not known to the inhabitants. Night it was before we came to that side of the bay where this people were. On shore the salvagers went, but found nobody. That night also we read at anchor aboard the shallop. On the morrow we went ashore, all but 2 men, and marched in arms up in the country. Having gone 3 miles, we came to a place where corn had been newly gathered, a house pulled down, and the people gone. A mile from hence, Namaschet, their king, in his lifetime had lived. His house was not like others, but a scaffold was largely built, with pools and planks, some 6 foot from ground, and the house upon that being situated on the top of a hill. Not far from hence, in a bottom, we came to a fort built by their deceased king. The manner thus. There were poles, some 30 or 40 foot long, stuck in the ground, as thick as they could be set one by another, and with these they enclosed a ring some 40 or 50 foot over. A trench breast high was digged on each side. One way there was to go into it with a bridge. In the midst of this palisoda stood the frame of an house, wherein, being dead, he lay buried. About a mile from hence we came to such another, but seated on the top of an hill. Here Namaschet was killed, none dwelling in it since the time of his death. At this place we stayed, and sent 2 salvages to look the inhabitants, and to inform them of our ends in coming, that they might not be fearful of us. Within a mile of this place they found the women of the place together, with their corn on heaps, whither we supposed them to be fled for fear of us, and the more, because in divers places they had newly pulled down their houses, and for haste in one place had set some of their corn covered with a mat, and nobody with it. With much fear they entertained us at first, but seeing our gentle carriage towards them, they took heart, and entertained us in the best manner they could, boiling cod and such other things as they had for us. At length, with much sending for, came one of their men, shaking and trembling for fear. But when they saw we intended them no hurt, but came to truck, he promised us his skins also. Of him we inquired for their queen, but it seemed she was far from thence, at least we could not see her. Here Tisquantum would have had us rifled the savage women, and taken their skins, and all such things as might be serviceable for us. For, said he, they are a bad people, and have oft threatened you. But our answer was, were they never so bad, we would not wrong them, or give them any just occasion against us. For their words we little weighed them. But if they once attempted anything against us, then we would deal far worse than he desired. Having well spent the day, we returned to the shallop, almost all the women accompanying us, to truck, who sold their coats from their backs and tied boughs about them, but with great shamefacedness, for indeed they are more modest than some of our English women are. We promised them to come again to them, and they us, to keep their skins. Within this bay, the salvagers say, there are 2 rivers, the one whereof we saw, having a fair entrance, but we had no time to discover it. Better harbours for shipping cannot be than here are. At the entrance of the bay are many rocks, and in all likelihood very good fishing ground. Many, yea, most of the islands have been inhabited, some being cleared from end to end, but the people are all dead or removed. Our victual growing scarce, the wind coming fair, and having a light moon, we set out at evening, and through the goodness of God came safely home before noon the day following. End of section 22. Section 23 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. A letter sent from New England to a friend in these parts, setting forth a brief and true declaration of the worth of that plantation. A letter sent from New England to a friend in these parts, setting forth a brief and true declaration of the worth of that plantation, as also certain useful directions for such as intend a voyage into those parts. Loving and old friend, although I received no letter from you by this ship, yet forasmuch as I know you expect the performance of my promise, which was to write unto you truly and faithfully of all things, I have therefore at this time sent unto you accordingly, referring you for further satisfaction to our more larger relations. You shall understand that in this little time that a few of us have been here, we have built 7 dwelling houses, and 4 for the use of the plantation, and have made preparation for divers others. We set the last spring some 20 acres of Indian corn, and sowed some 6 acres of barley and peas, and according to the manner of the Indians, we manured our ground with herrings, or rather shads, which we have in great abundance, and take with great ease at our doors. Our corn did prove well, and God be praised, we had a good increase of Indian corn, and our barley indifferent good, but our peas not worth the gathering, for we feared they were too late sown. They came up very well and blossomed, but the sun parched them in the blossom. Our harvest being gotten in, our governor sent 4 men on sowing, that so we might after a more special manner rejoice together, after we had gathered the fruit of our labours. They 4 in one day killed so much fowl, as with a little help beside served the company almost a week, at which time, amongst other recreations, we exercised our arms, many of the Indians coming amongst us, and amongst the rest their greatest king, Massachusets, with some 90 men, whom for 3 days we entertained and feasted, and they went out and killed 5 deer, which they brought to the plantation, and bestowed on our governor, and upon the captain and others. And although it be not always so plentiful as it was at this time with us, yet by the goodness of God we are so far from want, that we often wish you partakers of our plenty. We have found the Indians very faithful in their covenant of peace with us, very loving and ready to pleasure us. We often go to them, and they come to us. Some of us have been 50 miles by land in the country with them. The occasions and relations whereof you shall understand by our general and more full declaration of such things as are worth the noting. Yea, it hath pleased God so to possess the Indians with a fear of us and love unto us, that not only the greatest king amongst them, called Massachusets, but also all the princes and peoples round about us, have either made suit unto us, or been glad of any occasion to make peace with us, so that 7 of them at once have sent their messengers to us to that end. Yea, and flee, footnote, this is clearly a misprint for isle, end footnote, at sea, which we never saw, hath also together with the former yielded willingly to be under the protection and subjects to our sovereign Lord King James, so that there is now great peace amongst the Indians themselves, which was not formerly, neither would have been but for us. And we for our parts walk as peaceably and safely in the wood as in the highways in England. We entertain them familiarly in our houses, and they as friendly, bestowing their venison on us. They are a people without any religion, or knowledge of any God, yet very trusty, quick of apprehension, ripe-witted, just. The men and women go naked, only a skin about their middles. For the temper of the air, here it agreeth well with that in England, and if there be any difference at all, this is somewhat hotter in summer. Some think it to be colder in winter, but I cannot, out of experience, so say. The air is very clear, and not foggy, as hath been reported. I never in my life remember a more seasonable year than we have here enjoyed, and if we have once but kin, horses, and sheep, I make no question, but men might live as contented here as in any part of the world. For fish and fowl we have great abundance. Fresh cod in the summer is but coarse meat with us. Our bay is full of lobsters all the summer, and affordeth variety of other fish. In September we can take a hogshead of eels in a night, with small labour, and can dig them out of their beds. All the winter we have mussels and others at our doors. Oysters we have none near, but we can have them brought by the Indians when we will. All the springtime the earth sendeth forth very good salad herbs. Here are grapes, white and red, and very sweet and strong also. Strawberries, gooseberries, raspers, etc. Plums of 3 sorts, with black and red being almost as good as a damson. Abundance of roses, white, red, and damask, single but very sweet indeed. The country wanteth only industrious men to employ, for it would grieve your hearts, if, as I, you had seen so many miles together by goodly rivers uninhabited, and withal to consider those parts of the world wherein you live to be even greatly burdened with abundance of people. These things I thought good to let you understand, being the truth of things as near as I could experimentally take knowledge of, and that you might, on our behalf, give God thanks who hath dealt so favourably with us. Our supply of men from you came the 9th of November, 1621, putting in at Cape Cod, some 8 or 10 leagues from us. The Indians that dwell thereabout were they who were owners of the corn which we found in caves, for which we have given them full content, and are in great league with them. They sent us word there was a ship near unto them, but thought it to be a Frenchman. And indeed for ourselves we expected not a friend so soon. But when we perceived that she made for our bay, the governor commanded a great piece to be shot off, to call home such as were abroad at work, whereupon every man, yea, boy that could handle a gun were ready, with full resolution that if she were an enemy, we would stand in our just defence, not fearing them, but God provided better for us than we supposed. These came all in health unto us, not any being sick by the way, otherwise than by seasickness, and so continue at this time by the blessing of God. The goodwife Ford was delivered of a son the first night she landed, and both of them are very well. When it pleaseth God, we are settled and fitted for the fishing business and other trading. I doubt not, but by the blessing of God, the gain will give content to all. In the meantime, that we have gotten, we have sent by this ship, and thought it be not much, yet it will witness for us that we have not been idle, considering the smallness of our number all this summer. We hope the merchants will accept of it, and be encouraged to furnish us with things needful for further employment, which will also encourage us to put forth ourselves to the uttermost. Now, because I expect your coming unto us with other of our friends, whose company we much desire, I thought good to advertise you of a few things needful. Be careful to have a very good bread room to put your biscuits in. Let your cask for beer and water be iron-bound for the first tire, if not more. Let not your meat be dry-salted. None can better do it than the sailors. Let your meal be so hard trod in your cask that you shall need an adze or hatchet to work it out with. Trust not too much on us for corn at this time, for by reason of this last company that came, depending wholly upon us, we shall have little enough till harvest. Be careful to come by some of your meal to spend by the way. It will much refresh you. Build your cabins as open as you can, and bring good store of clothes and bedding with you. Bring every man a musket or fowling piece. Let your piece be long in the barrel, and fear not the weight of it, for most of our shooting is from stands. Bring juice of lemons, and take it fasting. It is of good use. For hot waters, aniseed is the best, but use it sparingly. If you bring anything for comfort in the country, butter or salad oil, or both is very good. Our Indian corn, even the coarsest, maketh a pleasant meat as rice. Therefore spare that, unless to spend by the way. Bring paper and linseed oil for your windows, with cotton yarn for your lamps. Let your shot be most for big fowls, and bring store of powder and shot. I forbear further to write for the present, hoping to see you by the next return. So I take my leave, commending you to the Lord for a safe conduct unto us. Resting in him, Plymouth in New England, this 11th of December, 1621, your loving friend, E.W. End of section 23. Section 24 of Mourt's Relation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow. Reasons and considerations touching the lawfulness of removing out of England into the parts of America. Forasmuch as many exceptions are daily made against the going into and inhabiting of foreign desert places to the hindrances of plantations abroad and the increase of distractions at home, it is not amiss that some which have been ear-witnesses of the exceptions made, and are either agents or abettors of such removals and plantations, do seek to give content to the world in all things that possibly they can. And although the most of the opposites are such as either dream of raising their fortunes here, to that then, which there is nothing more unlike, or such as affecting their home-born country so vehemently, as that they had rather, with all their friends, beg, yea, starve in it, than undergo a little difficulty in seeking abroad, yet are there some who, out of doubt, in tenderness of conscience, and fear to offend God, by running before they be called, are straitened, and do straiten others, from going to foreign plantations. For whose cause especially I have been drawn, out of my good affection to them, to publish some reasons that might give them content and satisfaction, to stay and stop the wilful and witty caviller, and herein I trust I shall not be blamed of any godly wife, though through my slender judgment I should miss the mark, and not strike the nail on the head, considering it is the first attempt that hath been made, that I know of, to defend those enterprises. Reason would, therefore, that if any man of deeper reach and better judgment see further or otherwise, that he rather instruct me than deride me. And being studious for brevity, we must first consider that, whereas God of old did call and summon our fathers by predictions, dreams, visions, and certain illuminations, to go from their countries, places, and habitations, to reside and dwell here or there, and to wander up and down from city to city, and land to land, according to his will and pleasure. Now there is no such calling to be expected for any matter whatsoever, neither must any so much as imagine that there will be now any such thing. God did once so train up his people, but now he doth not, but speaks in another manner, and so we must apply ourselves to God's present dealing, and not to his wonted dealing. And as the miracle of giving manna ceased, when the fruits of the land became plenty, so God, having such a plentiful storehouse of directions in his holy word, there must not now any extraordinary revelations be expected. But now the ordinary examples and precepts of the Scriptures, reasonably and rightly understood and applied, must be the voice and word that must call us, press us, and direct us in every action. Neither is there any land or possession now like unto the possession which the Jews had in Canaan, being legally holy and appropriated unto a holy people, the seed of Abraham, in which they dwelled securely, and had their days prolonged, it being an immediate voice said that he, the Lord, gave it them as a land of rest after their weary travels, and a type of eternal rest in heaven. But now there is no land of that sanctimony, no land so appropriated, none typical, much less any that can be said to be given of God to any nation as was Canaan, which they and their seed must dwell in, till God sendeth upon them sword or captivity. But now we are in all places strangers and pilgrims, travellers and sojourners, most properly, having no dwelling but in this earthen tabernacle. Our dwelling is but a wandering, and our abiding but as a fleeting, and in a word our home is nowhere but in the heavens, in that house not made with hands, whose maker and builder is God, and to which all ascend that love the coming of our Lord Jesus. Though then there may be reasons to persuade a man to live in this or that land, yet they cannot be the same reasons which the Jews had. But now, as natural, civil, and religious bands tie men, so they must be bound, and as good reasons for things terrene and heavenly appear, so they must be led. And so here falleth in our question, how a man that is here born and bred, and hath lived some years, may remove himself into another country. I answer, a man must not respect only to live and do good to himself, but he should see where he can live to do most good to others. For as one saith, he whose living is but for himself, it is time he were dead. Some men there are who of necessity must here live, as being tied to duties either to church, commonwealth, household, kindred, etc., but others, and that many, who do no good in none of those, nor can do none, as being not able or not in favour, or as wanting opportunity, and live as outcasts, nobodies, eyesores, eating but for themselves, teaching but themselves, and doing good to none, either in soul or body, and so pass over days, years, and months, yea, so live and so die. Now such should lift up their eyes, and see whether there be not some other place and country to which they may go to do good, and have use towards others of that knowledge, wisdom, humanity, reason, strength, skill, faculty, etc., which God hath given them for the service of others and his own glory. But not to pass the bounds of modesty, so far as to name any, though I confess I know many, who sit here still with their talent in a napkin, having notable endowments both of body and mind, and might do great good if they were in some places, which here do none, nor can do none, and yet through fleshly fear, niceness, straightness of heart, etc., sit still and look on, and will not hazard a dram of health, nor a day of pleasure, nor an hour of rest, to further the knowledge and salvation of the sons of Adam in that new world, where a drop of the knowledge of Christ is most precious, which is here not set by. Now what shall we say to such a profession of Christ, to which is joined no more denial of a man's self? But some will say, what right have I to go live in the heathen's country? Letting pass the ancient discoveries, contracts, and agreements which our Englishmen have long since made in those parts, together with the acknowledgment of the histories and chronicles of the other nations, who profess the land of America from the Cape de Florida unto the Bay of Canada, which is south and north 300 leagues and upwards, and east and west, further than yet hath been discovered, is proper to the King of England, yet letting that pass, lest I be thought to meddle further than it concerns me, or further than I have discerning, I will mention such things as are within my reach, knowledge, sight, and practice, since I have travailed in these affairs. And first, seeing we daily pray for the conversion of the heathens, we must consider whether there be not some ordinary means and course for us to take to convert them, or whether prayer for them be only referred to God's extraordinary work from heaven. Now it seemeth unto me that we ought also to endeavour and use the means to convert them, and the means cannot be used unless we go to them, or they come to us. To us they cannot come, our land is full. To them we may go, their land is empty. This, then, is a sufficient reason to prove our going thither to live lawful. Their land is spacious and void, and there are few, and do but run over the grass, as do also the foxes and wild beasts. They are not industrious, neither have art, science, skill, or faculty to use either the land or the commodities of it, but all spoils, rots, and is marred for want of manuring, gathering, ordering, etc. As the ancient patriarchs therefore removed from straighter places into more roomly, where the land lay idle and waste, and none used it, though there dwelt inhabitants by them, as Genesis 13, verses 6, 11, and 12, and chapter 34, verse 21, and chapter 41, verse 20, so is it lawful now to take a land which none useth, and make use of it. And as it is a common land, or unused and undressed country, so we have it by common consent, composition, and agreement, which agreement is double. First, the imperial governor, Massachusets, whose circuits in likelihood are larger than England and Scotland, hath acknowledged the King's Majesty of England to be his master and commander, and that once in my hearing, yea, and in writing under his hand to Captain Standish, both he and many other kings which are under him, as Parmet, Navset, Cormacuid, Narrow Wigginset, Namaschet, etc., with divers others that dwell about the bays of Packanokik and Massachusets. Neither hath this been accomplished by threats and blows, or shaking of sword, and sound of trumpet, for as our faculty that way is small, and our strength less, so our warring with them is after another manner, namely by friendly usage, love, peace, honest and just carriages, good counsel, etc., that so we and they may not only live in peace in that land, and they yield subjection to an earthly prince, but that as voluntaries they may be persuaded at length to embrace the Prince of Peace, Christ Jesus, and rest in peace with him forever. Secondly, this composition is also more particular and applicatory as touching ourselves there inhabiting. The Emperor, by a joint consent, hath promised and appointed us to live at peace, where we will, in all his dominions, taking what place we will, and as much land as we will, and bringing as many people as we will, and that for these two causes. First, because we are the servants of James, King of England, whose the land, as he confesseth, is. 2, because he hath found us just, honest, kind, and peaceable, and so loves our company. Yea, that in these things there is no dissimulation on his part, nor fear of breach, except our security engender in them some unthought of treachery, or our uncivility provoke them to anger, is most plain in other relations, which show that the things they did were not more out of love than out of fear. It being then first a vast and empty chaos, secondly, acknowledge the right of our sovereign king, thirdly, by a peaceable composition in part possessed of diverse of his loving subjects, I see not who can doubt or call in question the lawfulness of inhabiting or dwelling there, but that it may be as lawful for such as are not tied upon some special occasion here, to live there as well as here. Yea, and as the enterprise is weighty and difficult, so the honour is more worthy, to plant a rude wilderness, to enlarge the honour and fame of our dread sovereign, but chiefly to display the efficacy and power of the gospel, both in zealous preaching, professing, and wise walking under it, before the faces of these poor blind infidels. As for such as object the tediousness of the voyage thither, the danger of pirates' robbery, of the savages' treachery, etc., these are but lions in the way, and it were well for such men, if they were in heaven, for who can show them a place in this world where iniquity shall not compass them at the heels, and where they shall have a day without grief, or a lease of life for a moment, and who can tell but God what dangers may lie at our doors, even in our native country, or what plots may be abroad, or when God will cause our sun to go down at noondays, and in the midst of our peace and security lay upon us some lasting scourge for our so long neglect and contempt of his most glorious gospel. But we have here great peace, plenty of the gospel, and many sweet delights and variety of comforts. True indeed, and far be it from us to deny and diminish the least of these mercies, but have we rendered unto God thankful obedience for this long peace, whilst other peoples have been at wars? Have we not rather murmured, repined, and fallen at jars amongst ourselves, whilst our peace hath lasted with foreign power? Was there ever more suits in law, more envy, contempt, and reproach than nowadays? Abraham and Lot departed asunder, when there fell a breach betwixt them, which was occasioned by the straitness of the land. And surely I am persuaded that howsoever the frailties of men are principal in all contentions, Yet the straitness of the place is such, as each man is fain to pluck his means, as it were, out of his neighbour's throat. There is such pressing and depressing in town and country, about farms, trades, traffic, etc., so as a man can hardly anywhere set up a trade, but he shall pull down 2 of his neighbours. The towns abound with young tradesmen, and the hospitals are full of the ancient. The country is replenished with new farmers, and the almshouses are filled with old labourers. Many there are who get their living with bearing burdens, but mo are fain to burden the land with their whole bodies. Multitudes get their means of life by prating, and so do numbers more by begging. Neither come these straits upon men always through intemperancy, ill husbandry, indiscretion, etc., as some think, but even the most wise, sober, and discreet men go often to the wall, when they have done their best, wherein, as God's providence swayeth all, so it is easy to see that the straitness of the place, having in it so many straight hearts, cannot but produce such effects more and more, so as every indifferent-minded man should be ready to say with Father Abraham, Take thou the right hand, and I will take the left. Let us not thus oppress, straiten, and afflict one another, but seeing there is a spacious land, the way to which is through the sea, we will end this difference in a day. That I speak nothing about the bitter contention that hath been about religion, by writing, disputing, and inveighing earnestly one against another, the heat of which zeal, if it were turned against the rude barbarism of the heathens, it might do more good in a day than it hath done here in many years. Neither of the little love to the gospel, and profit which is made by the preachers in most places, which might easily drive the zealous to the heathens, who no doubt, if they had but a drop of that knowledge which here flieth about the streets, would be filled with exceeding great joy and gladness, as that they would even pluck the kingdom of heaven by violence, and take it as it were by force. The greatest let that is yet behind is the sweet fellowship of friends, and the satiety of bodily delights. But can there be 2 nearer friends almost than Abraham and Lot, or than Paul and Barnabas, and yet upon as little occasions as we have here they departed asunder, 2 of them being patriarchs of the church of old, the other the apostles of the church which is new? And their covenants were such as it seemeth might bind as much as any covenant between men at this day, and yet to avoid greater inconveniences they departed asunder. Neither must men take so much thought for the flesh, as not to be pleased except they can pamper their bodies with variety of dainties. Nature is content with little, and health is much endangered by mixtures upon the stomach. The delights of the palate do often inflame the vital parts, as the tongue setteth afire the whole body. Secondly, varieties here are not common to all, but many good men are glad to snap at a crust. The rent-taker lives on sweet morsels, but the rent-payer eats a dry crust, often with watery eyes. And it is nothing to say what some 1 of 100th hath, but what the bulk, body, and commonalty hath, which I warrant you is short enough. And they also, which now live so sweetly, hardly will their children attain to that privilege, but some circumventor or other will outstrip them and make them sit in the dust, to which men are brought in 1 age, but cannot get out of it again in 7 generations. To conclude, without all partiality, the present consumption which groweth upon us here, whilst the land groaneth under so many close-fisted and unmerciful men, being compared with the easiness, plainness, and plentifulness in living in those remote parts, may quickly persuade any man to a liking of this course, and to practice a removal, which being done by honest, godly, and industrious men, they shall there be right heartily welcome. But for other of dissolute and profane life, their rooms are better than their companies. For if here, where the gospel hath been so long and plentifully taught, they are yet frequent in such vices as the heathen would shame to speak of, what will they be, where there is less restraint in word and deed? My only suit to all men is that, whether they live there or here, they would learn to use this world as they used it not, keeping faith and a good conscience, both with God and men, that when the day of account shall come, they may come forth as good and fruitful servants, and freely be received, and enter into the joy of their master. R.C. End of section 24. End of Mourt's Relation, or Journal of the Plantation at Plymouth, by Edward Winslow.